We're going to call to order the town council meeting for June 21st, 2022. It is currently 7 o'clock. We are in the Harvey Hearing room. This meeting will be on Zoom. The ID number is 882758334148#, and the phone number is 1-301-715-8592. Roll call, please.
Council Honan. Here. Council Fusillo.
Here.
Council Munson.
Here.
Council Belcher.
Here.
Council DeMarco.
Here.
Council Flockhart.
Here.
Council Aiello.
Here.
Vice President Ruggiero. President Lettieri.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll ask us all to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilor Belcher.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes from June 7th, 2022 meeting have been circulated. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Councilor Flockhart, second by Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion, deletions, additions, subtractions, anything? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are now very fortunate to have a replay of the October swearing in of Chief Scott Wiley. During the interim town manager's stay, they have limited powers, and one of them is to appoint an acting person in some capacity, and in this case, former town manager interim, now Chief of Police Terry Delahanty, nominated and swore in as acting chief, Scott Wiley. We have been incredibly fortunate to have Scott for the town of Winthrop, and over the past, I don't know, it's been 8 months since the acting as acting chief. He has done nothing but great things. He has an incredible support by his firefighters, and we never, ever hear a bad word. They love him. He has treated them with respect and dignity, and we thank him for that. And we are very lucky as a town to have him. So I would ask the chief to step forward, and I would ask our town clerk to do the official swearing in. Now, this is not a council appointment. This is done by our new full-time, in-person town manager, Tony Marino. So Tony has seen the work done firsthand, and he has made this appointment. Tony and Denise, the floor is yours.
Hello again. Okay. All right. Would you raise your right hand, please? I, Scott Wiley,
I, Scott Wiley,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Commonwealth of
to
Massachusetts,
the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
and will support the Constitution thereof
and will support the Constitution thereof
and the Constitution of the United
and the
States,
Constitution of the United States,
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform all duties
discharge and perform all the duties
incumbent on me as the Town of Winthrop Fire Chief,
incumbent on me as the Town of Winthrop Fire Chief,
according to the best of my ability and understanding,
according to the best of my ability and understanding,
agreeing to the rules and regulations of the Constitution
agreeably to the rules and regulations of the Constitution
and the laws of the Commonwealth of the United States.
and the laws of the Commonwealth and the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
There you go, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Here's your official appointment letter. All right, thank you very much. No more interim title, thank you. In my brief time, it's been my pleasure to serve with the chief, as you can see from the turnout tonight from his guys and other chiefs I talked to in the area and chiefs I work with. He stands out among the peers, so you're lucky to have him. So thank you, chief, I appreciate it. Council President, we've increased the room attendance here, but I think we got, you know, a fire watch covered. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Great job, guys. Thank you.
And thank you for the support. We have a few things under general information recommendations tonight. First is the Board of Health, and I believe Bill Schmidt is here to talk a little bit about black plastic in semi-public swimming pools. Mr. Schmidt,
Somebody said it's exciting, I'm not sure about that.
the floor is yours.
So thank you, Council President Lettieri, fellow council members, town manager, members of the audience. So just going to talk briefly about a couple of regulations that were in the drafting stage, and we're going to have public hearings on it. Both of these regulations came about from the suggestions of town employees. In the case of the black plastic ban, I think Wendy Millar-Page might have been here at the last meeting, which I couldn't attend. Basically, as you probably know, the black plastic is not recyclable. She has it on our information that you're sending out to the town, that black plastic should not be put in the recyclable containers. So to try to reduce the amount of black plastic, we're also proposing a ban from stores and retail establishments to use black plastic. They can substitute white plastic or other containers, where we'd be giving a 6 months delay on after the regulation is passed to allow stores or restaurants to use up what they already have. We're also going to have a provision in there, if there's some hardship or other situation, we may extend that another 6 months. So our goal in this, as Wendy suggested, is to basically eliminate some of the possibility of contaminated recyclable materials, and also reduce the amount of black plastic in the environment. So we're going to have a public hearing on that. We've already been working with the chamber on this issue. We'll obviously take testimony to see if there's any reasons not to do this, but from what I understand we're talking about, we're going to allow the stores the opportunity to use up their inventory, and also there's no cost bill difference. So we think that there shouldn't be any opposition, but if there is, we'll entertain any suggestions to modify or whatever. So that's the first regulation. The second regulation came as a suggestion from Al Legee, Inspectional Services. We actually, there was communication with former interim town manager Terry Delahanty regarding an incident, some incidents at one of the larger complexes in town. Al suggested we look at what the city of Chelsea has done with their Board of Health regulations. So we're basically talking about, this ordinance would affect basically 4 facilities in town, which is Governor's Park, Seal Harbor, Pond Street Apartments, and I believe it's the Pillar House? Pillar House, I believe those are called. So it's basically a question of putting together some regulations, possibly in certain circumstances a requirement for a lifeguard, but that's not necessary if there are other things they would comply with. Again, we will notify the 4 different facilities which would come under this. We'll have a discussion with them to see if there's any issues that might prevent this from happening or anything from being notified. We think both of these regulations, if we go through with it, would probably be enacted in the fall. These were both passed as drafts unanimously by the Board of Health. So I'll entertain any questions or comments you might have.
Any questions from the council? Councilor Flockhart.
Considering my district is primarily involved, does this apply only to outdoor pools?
That's the only thing that we were brought attention to as public pools. I'm not sure of any other than those 4 that I mentioned that would be covered. Are you aware of indoor pools?
Yes,
Oh. Is this Seal Harbor indoor pool?
yes.
Ah. I did not know that. So I'll have to ask history,
And,
but it
you know, our
may.
indoor pool is open 24 hours a day
Yeah.
and has never had a lifeguard because
Yeah.
it's sparsely used.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the goal is particularly the outdoor pools, and quite frankly, the larger places where you have a number of people coming in, you're concerned about nobody monitoring, having young kids there, and those type of things. So, but that's a good question, Ray. I'll ask that question. Thank you,
Any
Councilor
other
Flocker.
counselor? Counselor DeMarco?
Two questions, Bill. First off, like, what is the definition of a black container? You said container, I know you said black plastic, but what would be a container? Are we talking like black trash bags? Are we talking like?
No, we're talking about containers. So in other words, if you go to the stores and there might be chicken, say for instance, that's in a, you know, has a, say a clear top but a black plastic
Yes,
underneath,
okay,
that type of thing.
that's a black container.
Yeah, so well,
Yeah.
the top would be recyclable,
Okay,
but the bottom wouldn't be. Now, I know, for instance, there's this place in town that sells a covered, which is the top is, it's contained, but it's the top is plastic, the bottom is black. So I cut it, and I put the top in the recycling, but the black has to go in the trash.
okay, understood.
So but it's any black plastic, so you might have a top, my understanding is, and Wendy would be more expert than me, but even if you have like a juice bottle, which is clear at the bottom with black at the top, you shouldn't dispose of the black in the recycling. That's my
Understood.
understanding.
Understood. The other question I had is in regards to the pools. Outside of like maybe mandatory lifeguards, what other regulations would you be looking at?
So if you have the regulation, which I think
With,
Yeah,
the-
it needs-
with our minutes.
Denise sent it to you.
With
So
the-
the
with the
lifeguards are not
agenda.
mandatory if there are other things, but basically, it's basically safety regulations
Yeah.
is what we're concerned about. We don't want, you know, young children being unattended. We want to make sure if there isn't a lifeguard, there's somebody there who basically can monitor the situation, is able to swim and perform it. So we're looking for safety. As you probably know, every year there is a number of drownings that occur in pools, and the purpose of the regulation is to try to hopefully prevent that from happening.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from the public? It's a public hearing. All right, thank you very much, Bill. We will close that public hearing. We will now open for general information. CBD revitalization presentation by Town Planner Rachel Kelly. Rachel, the floor is yours.
Hard copies of the plan. Oh, that's right. They're all the same. I did print a couple copies because there's a lot of ink, so.
So for the council, if you can't, there's a, well, I guess you guys could see, but it's on the TV behind us, but it's unable to be on the TV in front of us, so the public can see.
No, she said she didn't print the copies.
Attach the agenda, the first agenda.
Oh, that, they are on both now.
Do we need it for anything else? Do you need this?
I've seen it, I have a copy of it.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me back. So I'm excited to present this to you this evening and fill you in on all the work that we've been doing on this project, a small economic development focused project. So the goal of this storefront and facade program is kind of a beginning stage of some economic development in all of our downtown areas. And we'll kind of go through tonight the background and how this came to be, and then the process that we've gone through, and then the general information and everything. And I'm here with our consultant that we were able to get as a result of this grant, and she'll be able to go through everything as well, and I'll have Emily introduce herself in a moment. But yeah, so we can kind of get started. So just as I guess a preference, throughout this presentation you'll see some photos, some different storefronts in the area. That's just to give us a sense of place and to show scale and to show just the different storefronts around town. It's not focused on any particular one or referenced in the plan for any specific reason. We just wanted to have some color, have some town-specific photos. So if you see a storefront you recognize, you know, it's just I wanted to include it. So technical assistance for this program was fully funded through the Department of Housing and Community Development's Downtown Initiative Program. I received this grant through the One Stop Massachusetts grant program earlier this year, and our provided consultant, Emily, let her introduce herself. She was helped bring this to light and put everything together and get this plan started. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
So, good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. My name is Emily Innes. I'm from Innes Associates. I'm an urban planner and designer, and storefront programs are one of my specialties. So when DHCD gave the town this grant, they assign consultants to go with the grant, and I was lucky enough to be assigned to this process. So Rachel and I have been working together on this, and we're excited to be showing you tonight what we've been working on.
So, sorry, it's behind you, but so the program, again, this is an economic development strategy, a first step in an economic development change within the downtown areas of Winthrop. It's going to be essentially a grant tool or a grant program to help strengthen and support our small businesses and provide them with some assistance on making exterior storefront improvements. They can be small scale, some larger scale, but it's mostly focused on exterior aesthetics. The goal of that would be to, you know, help spruce up the storefront and help provide some funding to them to make changes and to make updates that may be a little bit out of reach, you know, for financial reasons or whatever reason. And again, it's to revitalize and showcase our downtown and our commercial center. Next slide. So the process of this, again, this was awarded earlier this year, and we started off with some site walks and photos in March of this year of 2022. In mid-March, we did a public semi-public meeting with just all of our business owners in the area, and I have to thank the Chamber of Commerce for helping get the word out about that meeting and help setting that up and doing some great email blasts and getting the information out there. The Chamber of Commerce has been wonderful, so we have to thank them. And we did a public meeting with them, and we kind of just explained the background on this and kind of the general goal of this is a grant to write a grant, and we're, you know, hoping to just help out our small businesses and in a small step. And then, so we were able to get some feedback from them and talk about their concerns and sort of talk about what they were looking for and get the word out to them. And then in April, we were able to meet with a few of the members of the Economic Development Committee, the town council members, and kind of give them the same kind of background and the same summary of this program. And then we've, from there to about now, we've just been going over with staff, Emily and I, and kind of drafting this and drafting what we were hoping that this program could be, and getting feedback from, you know, using the feedback that we received and integrating it into this program. And then we wrapped up the draft in May, and here we are today at the town council meeting, bringing this work to you and bringing this background. Next slide. There we go. And then again, this is just some photos of different photos around town. You'll obviously probably recognize all of these. Winthrop's kind of got a kind of a benefit is that there a lot of our storefronts are smaller scale, and the smaller scale kind of works in our benefit if we were to help support, you know, these small businesses in making some changes or whatever they may be or whatever they want. There's a lot of possibility. There's a lot you can do, and we can help, you know, alleviate any, you know, expenditures that are out of reach for some of our storefronts, and then just help them make any improvements that they're interested in. Next slide. And again, this is just some more storefronts, the smaller scale, just, gives lots of possibility and kind of gives us a sense of place. So these are the areas, this program would be focusing on, is all of our small businesses around town. So I'll pass everything off to Emily, and she will kind of go through everything in depth and go from there.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So what I wanted to talk with you about tonight is just to give you a quick overview of what the program looks like. I know you probably haven't had a chance to look at it in depth. So this will be the outline, and then you get a chance to look at it. Rachel will talk about next steps, but there'll be plenty of time for you to give us comments over the next few weeks before we wrap this up. This is designed, as Rachel said, as an economic development program, and one of the things I've done in both the document itself and the last slide in this deck is to provide some additional resources about how storefront improvement programs can help small businesses. But the meat of the draft program is this outline that you see in front of you. And this program is set up so that at some point you can take it forward and discuss it further. I'll give Rachel the Word version as well as the InDesign version, so if you have changes to make, you'll be able to do that. But it's really to set the stage for your conversation about how this could work. So you see the components there. I'll walk through them one by one. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the purpose, as we've talked about, is to leverage it's for economic development, but it's primarily to leverage the significant public investment this town made to the central business district. And then as Rachel and I were talking, the idea is that this would be open to the entire town, or businesses throughout the entire town, to support all of Winthrop's businesses, but the genesis was your investment in the CBD. So all businesses would be eligible to do so. They have to have a storefront visible from the street or another public way, and they can submit an application to the town. Now, the improvements are under components, and that it lists the different types of eligible improvements. The program as structured now is really thought of, as Rachel mentioned, a beautification program for the external storefronts. And you'll see that we have a 50%, a suggested 50% matching grant up to $1,000. However, we've added some components that are common to other storefront improvement programs. So that includes not just beautification, awnings, lighting, planters, but also addressing code violations, improvements to address accessibility. That's particularly important if you have storefronts that take a step to get into or two to get into. Makes it less easy for customers to get in. And then also energy efficiency. That's been a big push in a lot of communities. And you'll see in the document there's some precedent examples there. So that covers the base. This is for economic development. All storefront businesses are eligible. These are the things they're eligible for. And again, the suggested match of 50% up to $1,000. Next slide, please. Now, the rest of this is really the nuts and bolts of the process. So I like to think of the first slide as the one that town council will want to spend the most time on when you get to that point. Those are those kind of the decision points. The rest is, how do you apply? How long does it take for the town to approve your application? How long do you, the business, have to do the work? Submitting the documentation for reimbursement. So it's important to understand that the town doesn't pay first. The store owner has to do the work according to the guidelines set up in the application, get all the receipts, pay everything, and then apply to the town for reimbursement. So there's a sort of a comfort level that the work's been done. Also, if it's something that has any requirement for a building permit, obviously they have to go through that building permit. So no for a coat of paint, but if they're putting in some of their own money and they're doing some of those energy efficiencies, that might trigger a building permit. So that also happens, and that's all outlined in there. There's also how the town can reject an application and how the town can terminate somebody's grant if they have not followed the procedures, and that's outlined there. Next slide, please. So then the final piece, Rachel mentioned funding sources. Various towns and cities have different ways of funding this. I've given you an example of a couple of towns and one city in the appendix and how they've done that. But I've also provided some grant programs that might be useful in terms of thinking about how to fund it. There's a number of programs out there that might be useful. The precedents you see up there, Ashland, Brooklyn, Cambridge, and Woburn, they each have different strategies. Cambridge might seem like a stretch, but one of the things I liked about them was how they thought about which types of improvements would get how much money. So although they're a large city, as a structure, they're very useful to you. Ashland had some really interesting, innovative funding programs. So as you go through, you'll see those options. And then finally, there's some sample application forms in the draft appendices, but I'm actually going to do your own application form. That's part of the next steps. And for that, I'm going to turn that back to you, Rachel.
All right. Thanks, Denise. So next steps for this, again, this is kind of the first final draft, we'll call it. We wanted to encourage you to take some time, take the next few weeks to review it and provide any comment back to me that you may have, anything you want to add, any questions, anything you'd like to take out. Some of the numbers and some of the costs and a little bit of the design is kind of a placeholder. We can adjust those to whatever would work for the town. Again, this is a grant to write a grant, to keep that in mind. So yeah, definitely take a look and encourage you to provide any kind of feedback or questions that you may have, and we can work to integrate that into this and go forward from there. And then once we have a little bit more of a final draft and everything's kind of put together, as mentioned, Emily's going to prepare a draft application form. Again, this can be adjusted as the town needs, if this is the route we want to go. And put that all together, and then we, if the Chamber of Commerce is still willing to help, we'd like to send this out again to the small businesses in an email blast like we did with our public meeting, and get their feedback and see what they think, see if they're comfortable with things, see if it makes sense to them. They may look at it and say this is actually confusing, and we can adjust it however need be. And that's something we can do in-house pretty easily. And then once we kind of get everything finalized and put together, we can kind of take the next steps to see if this is a program and a plan that we want to move forward with, if this is something we want to pursue. If it is a program and a plan that we want to pursue, then the next steps would be for me to kind of pursue some funding. There are, as mentioned in that document that you have, there are some grant programs and public funding sources that we can look into to sort of fund this and use that funding to help the small businesses and reimburse them for the work done. And if it's something we wanted to pursue down the road with town money as well, we could do that. So we have a few options, but for right now, we just have to start with this, get this to where we like it, if we like it, if this is a route we want to take, and a program we want to pursue and move forward, and and then we'll go from there. So there's no, once this is wrapped up, there's no solid timeline beyond that, but this is our first step. So we can kind of go from there. But like I mentioned, I can get you a Word document if you'd like, or if you want to use the hard copy and email me, or we can get some comments and feedback, and then once we get it a little more finalized and the application form is done, we'll hopefully be able to get it off to our small businesses and kind of regroup and go from there.
Any questions? Councilor Aiello?
Just a comment, though, Word document would be really helpful.
Of course,
And
yeah.
Number two, is there a hard deadline you want to set for us to make sure we keep the process moving?
We had talked about July 8th,
July 8th.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you need a little wiggle room for whatever reason, I think we can make that happen too.
July 8th in terms of response from us?
Yeah, if you were able
We
to.
have a council meeting the 19th. Would that be okay, or is that too late?
So this was grant funded. I know we have to kind
Yeah,
of
is
wrap
there
up
a
some of it.
timeframe on the?
I don't mind
yeah.
being flexible on that, so, yeah.
I
if
think
that's
that,
appropriate.
yeah, I think that would be fine
But
if,
just make sure, if there's an issue, please let us know. but
Okay,
we'll
yeah.
Look at the 19th.
okay, perfect, all right.
Other questions? Councilor Munson?
So as it stands, you are asking us to vote upon anything, or are you just wanting us to discuss what you've presented in front of us?
This is just an introductory discussion, no votes are required at this stage. We just wanted the chance to introduce the draft at this point, so you'd have the ability to give us feedback into what you think. And there'd be several processes before this became a final program, including at some point, town council adoption, but right now it's.
So if you had to boil it down to some option A, B, and C, or even just option A and B, right now I have some case studies here that where there's grants. It looks as though you're looking to take what the grant has given the town already and disperse it. Is that option A with a 50% match, or is it not really there yet? It's not necessarily, because we still need to talk as a town council to determine if we want to put in our own monies? Is that what the,
You need to talk, you're absolutely on the right track, so there's no funding for it now. The current grant was for services to
explore
create
it, write
the
it out?
program, basically, exactly. So the next step would be, is this something that the town council thinks is appropriate for its small businesses? And if so, then it would be, how does it get funded? Is it a combination, is it all grant funding, and then that's Rachel searching for the funding source? Is it a combination of grant and municipal, or is it all municipal? So those are probably your three options in terms of funding.
In terms of the pictures you took, I know there was no like plan or, but it would be nice to see what you envision, especially being part of the design team, what you would see, how that could actually benefit. And are you looking for consistency or amongst different storefronts to kind of create a kind of feel amongst the CBD and the different shopping neighborhoods? Or are you looking just for upgrade?
So that's an interesting point, and both were brought up in the conversation with the businesses, with some liking the idea of consistency and some liking the idea of just simply get it to an upgrade, but don't require us all to look like each other. The program doesn't make a decision on that, the way it's set up now. So I think that should be part of the continuing conversations. I can see, and certainly different towns have gone in different directions. One, the sort of the biggest standard is those that have the historic districts, where it's all pretty much exactly the same with some minor variation in signage and colors. And then the others, it's, those are starting from a point where we just want to get everything cleaned up and looking nice, but not necessarily require consistency. So those, again, could be options. And that goes to that first slide I talked about, where it's, the amount and the components. That's sort of the piece that would have the consistency or non-consistency, depending on what the town council wants to see.
Fair enough. And you put in a 50% match with up to $1,000, and that's proposed?
That's a suggested placeholder. Certainly there are other communities that have done more. It's a good starting point. That wouldn't get a business owner everything, but it's enough money to suggest, to be a real help. If you're interested in tiers, I think Cambridge is a good example of how they've structured. If you do this type of work, you get this amount of money. And their website is very clear.
Okay.
And I've given all the links to the website, so you do a little research on that end as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions? Thank both of you for your time, and we will get back to you second, third week in July.
Great, thank you so much.
So still under general information, I'm gonna take this time just to talk a little bit. Read a statement. Yesterday, as the town of Winthrop and others around the Commonwealth recognized the first federal holiday celebration of Juneteenth, I wanted to address a few of some residents' concerns who have reached out to the town and the town council regarding the fact that we did not fly a Juneteenth flag or a pride flag this month. I want to assure everyone that the town of Winthrop is an inclusive community and will not tolerate hate at any level, and the town council and I will continue to work to ensure that continues to be true. Due to the recent Supreme Court ruling that just came down regarding the City of Boston lawsuit, we felt it was in the best interest to stick to our current policy, which states no flags other than the US, the state, and the POW flag would be flown on town property. That is a policy that has been in place for 3 years now. Our town manager is looking, and I had put on the agenda a month ago to discuss a flag policy. And I can't speak for Vice President Ruggiero, but I believe, and I don't want to speak for him, but I believe he chose at that time to wait for KP to get back to us with rulings. I do know our town manager and I have looked out and reached out with different flag policies to bring to the council for consideration at a future meeting. We are very cognizant about potential lawsuits for the town, and we want to be very wary of the town's money. And we want to have, if the council so chooses, how it would work, the council is the legislative body of the town. If the council wanted to enact a flag policy, the council has the ability to do that. In lieu of that, the town manager has the ability to create a flag policy, which is how, and not Tony, who's been here for 3 weeks, this is how we are where we are right now with the policy we have. I think it's if we were to consider a policy, it needs to be a policy that works. It needs to be a policy that is very clear to me and transparent, and has no ambiguity, and does not leave the town open for any potential litigation. And with regards to showing our support for Pride Month and the Juneteenth holiday, the town manager will have 2 tables out at Ingleside Park tomorrow. There is a cookout, I believe, which is a community policing activity, as well as a Parks and Rec event. And we, the town manager and staffing will be handing out some flyers, one for Pride Month and one for Juneteenth, and basically to celebrate and to educate the public. We will continue to work with the DEIC in regards to this and other activities, and look at how we can show our support in whatever way the council chooses, or the town manager in lieu of the council. You know, we encourage you to come out and join us as we celebrate the town of Winthrop and all other great people who live in this town. So I thank you for that. And now we will get back to public hearings. We have a public hearing to appropriate the sum of $2,912,000 to pay costs of constructing and reconstructing water mains on Revere Street, Crest Ave, and Grover's Street. This is an SRF loan. It does have this has been brought up at a different meeting. It's already come out of finance with a positive recommendation. We didn't vote on it at the last meeting. We wanted to make sure we had the proper time to advertise it. And why continuing, we will be having a special council meeting on this Thursday for the sole purpose of approving the minutes of this meeting, because if we are to vote in the affirmative, it would not be official until we actually declared the minutes official. And there is a time constraint on this that we have to do this by June 30th. And this is not a rush that this just came to us. This has been years in the making. So we're having a public hearing on this. It has come out of finance with positive recommendation. I will ask DPW Director Calla to speak on this.
Sure, so this project will,
Table just so they can hear it. Yeah.
good evening, everybody. So this particular project is, it's basically to prepare for the upcoming TIP project. It will reline approximately 3,500 feet of older cast iron water main and replace another 4,500 feet of even older cast iron water main along the Revere Street corridor, Crest Ave, and a portion of Grover's Ave. It comes with principal forgiveness. We expect 18 to 20% of principal forgiveness. But I do want to make clear that this SRF funding is for construction only. So there will still be an engineering and design component to the project.
And I will say we have our Assistant CFO, Robbie Powers, has run the numbers. I believe he's on the call too, to see, because this will have an effect on water and sewer rates in the future. And my understanding is, and I could be off a little on the numbers, but my understanding is this potential piece of it could have an impact of somewhere between 35 and 43 cents on the rate. Not 100% sure. but in that ballpark. This is a project that is in the pipeline, it's ready to be done. It would tie in with the National Grid project, and that the corridor would be that much longer. We have requested, as we've discussed this many times in the past, we have requested that this project is extremely cognizant of the traffic issues at the Fort Bank School, because this will be going right by there. And we understand it's going to be an extensive project, and it's going to take some time and cause some headaches for a lot of people. Does anyone on the council wish to be heard on this? Is anyone in, I'm sorry, Councilor Aiello. Councilor Belcher.
Thank you. What do you anticipate the engineering and design costs running?
It's typically 8 to 10% of the overall cost of the project.
And do you have any idea the estimated time from start to finish on this?
It's probably a 6-month project. We're actually, National Grid Gas is gonna be starting their replacement in that same area from McGee's Corner up to Crest Ave. And they're trying to get the bulk of their work done during the summer months, obviously to have less of an impact on the schools. I would try to schedule our project in FY '23, which would be really the last, calendar year '23, would be the last year that we would have the opportunity to do this work prior to the start of the TIP project.
Okay, thank you.
And you did, and excuse me if I didn't hear, but did you say the total cost of this project? Total cost of the project would be?
Well, it's 2.9 for construction.
Right,
And then another, figure another 10% for engineering costs.
right. And potential easement takings, correct?
No, that's the TIP project.
Yeah.
Well, the TIP project this is a separate project
Right.
from that. So the TIP project still has easement fees, still has some legal costs, to do the title searches for the easements.
Right.
But yeah, it's in
Totally
preparation
different
of that
project,
project. It's not part of
Right.
it.
Councilor Aiello.
So let me begin with this is clearly an important and necessary project, and it's a series of projects. It's National Grid, it's doing the water elements that are described here, and then it's the full reconstruction of street sidewalks from McGee's Corner all the way past the school, over the hill, down to Crest Ave, and through that intersection. The concern I expressed last time to the new town manager, I'll express again today. Major thoroughfare, about, my guess is 2.5, 3 years of construction of various components, a lot of disruption in a town that is already heavily trafficked, and we're getting in and out of the town is very difficult. This is gonna make that experience that the Highlands has experienced and everybody else of getting out through the Revere end even more complicated. I don't think, my guess is that 95% of the people in this town have no idea this project's about to happen, and if they've heard of it, they've heard about a TIP project. We don't even call it Revere Street. There are no real set of publicly understandable sequencing where the detours are gonna be, what the disruption's gonna be, limitations on hours of service, what's gonna happen on weekends, et cetera. I do think that we need to do a better job of consolidating. The average person doesn't care that there's 3 separate projects happening, in addition to the 4th one that's happening, which I think is the MWRA project that's under construction right now, right? The one coming from Short Beach?
That's National Grid.
That's part of the National Grid project. There's already a lot of frustration. There's gonna be more frustration with this. We need a plan, and we need a series of public hearings about this so people can understand. Because before we put out these contracts, we really need to ensure that we're providing clear direction and limitations to the behavior of the contractors, as well as make sure that the final product is something, especially that stuff that's visible, crosswalks, trees, sight lines, et cetera, bus stops, are clearly understood by everybody and agreed to. We've advanced this project through COVID. It's been almost impossible to get the public to pay attention to it when they're dealing with a pandemic. We've got time now. Now's the time to step on the gas, and before we finalize anything, have a clear, understandable plan that is reviewed and receives input from the larger community. I can't stress it enough, we're gonna get killed, we will have failed as a council if we don't do this.
Council Flockhart.
I'd like to back up Councilor Aiello in saying that all of a sudden, the traffic started going through the Highlands because it was rerouted off Revere Street. And clearly, the people in Precinct 4 were hit with a surprise. They did not expect that traffic to be going through there, and all of a sudden, they were unhappy about it. So I agree that most of the town doesn't know what's going on and needs to have more information.
Councilor Munson.
I was just gonna suggest on the lines of communication, that if you have access to those large signs with the ability to display digital lettering, where people drive and where the construction will be, to have one at the beginning and the end, so to give dates and reroutes of those dates, so that as you're driving in the trouble or in the future construction area, people are aware of it. Or as another means of communication, in addition to the digital signage, I would suggest potentially actually doing drops to each and every home that's going to be affected in the area. That might be too much work, but I just think that communication is critical to making people happy and aware of what's about to happen.
Mr. Cal, how long has this project been in the works?
The TIP project started in 2015.
And we've had a lot of public.
We've had public hearings, yes, absolutely.
And
I mean,
we
they're
need to-
required for the process, but I have reached out to the engineer, and I've been hearing, certainly been hearing Councilor Aiello's request, and I'm happy to, bring them in again for a presentation of the status of the project. It is at 100% design at this point, and it's been submitted, so it's not really an opportunity to redesign the project, but certainly to educate and
To continue, and we've had public hearings, but Councilor Aiello is right, that we want to make sure everybody, no matter how often you go out and tell people, it's still going to be a surprise to a lot of people when it happens, but that whole corridor has been, in Council Flockhart's precinct, it's been a trouble, and Council DeMarco's house, I'm sure. It's been a burden, and it will be, and it's long. It's not, this is a 6-month project. The project overall, like Councilor Aiello said, is
we'll have another
closer to
3
3
years
years.
of some type of construction in that area.
And it limits us to, I would love to address some safety concerns I have with coming in over the bridge into East Boston, but you can't even think about, we only have 2 ways, and if we working on both ends, we're in big trouble, so we can't even think about that yet until, Council Flockhart.
When we did the CVD project, we got bi-weekly updates as to exactly what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. Can we get something like that on these projects?
Absolutely. Again, this project hasn't been bid or awarded at this time, so we don't have a contractor on.
But we do still have traffic rerouted through the Highlands, and it would be nice to know what times
National Grid
happening.
has been doing that. They have been putting out a 2-week look ahead. There was a pause. It was happening last year. Dan Cameron, who's the regional coordinator, made that happen. And I know there was a pause when they first got started again this year. It is my understanding that they're back on that initiative, and I'll
Okay.
certainly follow up with the project manager to make sure.
Town manager.
Yeah, if I could, Steve and I have talked a lot about this. I also had a meeting with the owners of the marketplace today, and National Grid, while they're doing an okay job getting the message out, they need to do a better job. Like, they went around and just kind of taped notices on people's doors, and really I saw the notice, it was very vague, didn't give a lot of information. I had followed up with Steve today to get a little more information, so that kind of information National Grid needs to do a better job at getting out, so we're gonna follow up with them this week and make sure that happens. So, message received, and we're gonna get the messages out and do a better job at, communicating this project.
Anyone else?
Just keep in mind that this is 3 different contractors out
Right.
there right now.
Right.
You have National Grid
Yeah.
Electric, National Grid Gas, and you would
Yeah.
think, okay, National Grid, there's National Grid. They're like 2 separate entities.
Without a doubt, yeah.
So, and then you have you have, the water stuff as well, so.
Yeah.
else on the council? Anyone in the audience? Public? Yes, Lisa, just state your name.
Lisa Albrini, Precinct 5. I actually came for some completely other reasons
That's
tonight,
okay.
but to Councilor Ayala's point, I had no idea this was going on or coming up. I think we pay attention. I pay attention pretty well. I try to what's happening, and I appreciate the fact that this was going on for 7 years, and I'm sure there have been hearings over time. But I can't tell you, I live on Quincy Ave, the amount of traffic through the Highlands, I can't tell you the number of times that I and my neighbors have nearly been run over. You know, people don't stop at the stop sign on Cliff Ave going on to Quincy when they're rerouted. It's really been hard, and so I just wholeheartedly support some kind of coordinated effort as best as it can. I appreciate Director Kala that there are 3 different contractors, so that's like pretty impossible and hard, but the extent that it can be coordinated and certainly communicated better and have some details up there even occasionally so that people do stop at the stop signs, that would be great. I do love the idea too of the drops. I have to say when DPW did that up in the Highlands for replacing the lead pipes, it was fabulous. I mean, we all got notices at our doorstep, you know, when it would be available, when it would be happening. That was really super helpful. So I appreciate that, Director Keller, and that kind of an approach would be great.
Absolutely. So again, the TIP project is what started back in 2015. National Grid Electric, that project was kind of sprung on us, you know, about 2 years ago. You know, and they came in and they wanted to get rid of the direct burial, and we had concerns, you know, of them getting it done prior to our TIP project so that we wouldn't be on top of each other. So that we weren't expecting when the TIP project started. We certainly weren't expecting the electric project to be happening right before, or 2 years, and then it prolonged. It seems like it's prolonging our project, but it's really 2 different projects. So, but they felt that it was a necessary thing to keep Winthrop properly served. So,
Anyone else in the audience?
I just,
We're gonna have another public hearing on the
All
same
right, sounds
exact
good.
thing. You could ask the same question.
that's what you
All right, we're gonna close that public hearing. We're gonna open another public hearing to appropriate the sum of $1,633,750 to pay costs of reconstructing and making extraordinary repairs to the Revere Street Pressure Regulating Valve Station. Director Calla.
yep. So again, this is approximately $1.6 million project that will upgrade the town's pressure reducing stations, which is our primary connection to the our MWRA water supply. I don't know if you all remember, but we've had several failures at that facility. One, which the pressure reducing valve failed open and caused 6 simultaneous breaks in town because what this station does is it regulates the pressure coming into our town. We operate at about 68 pounds. That's what our pipes can handle. MWRA serves us at 110 pounds. So if you send that 110 pounds through infrastructure that's not capable of handling that pressure, we got those 6 breaks simultaneously. It just happened. Another more recent failure at that station, the valves failed closed, thankfully, but also it's like a light switch. It shuts off the water to the town, and that's again a health and safety situation. You lose all your fire protection, and you know, people are out of water. We were able to get that back on in just under 2 hours with the help of MWRA using one of their cross connection points. They were able to backfeed us from their island. So this is a very, very important piece of our, it's the heart of our infrastructure. Part of this project, in addition to upgrading that pressure reducing station, will upgrade the communications between that station and our water tower, which was the cause of, hydraulically, we're not getting a good cycling in that water tank. It's creating an aged water situation, which is why we were getting those total coliform hits through the summer months of last year. So this is a project which should correct and upgrade both of those situations, and certainly a very worthwhile project for the water distribution system.
All right, this also did go through finance, came out with positive recommendation. I'll open it up for questions on the council. Councilor Belcher.
Thank you. Have we accounted for upkeep of the upgrades over time after we do this large project? Do we know what it'll cost year to year to keep it running smoothly?
Are you talking, the water main?
At the pressure station? At the pressure station, this one, the 1.6
Sure.
million?
So that station was installed in the early nineties. And the upkeep of that, I mean, after these valves are replaced and upgraded, you're gonna have, probably every 5 years, you'll have to replace the seats, you know, of these, they're redundant valves. All the pipe is ductile. We're not looking to replace the piping. Ductile pipe is it's got a well over 100-year life cycle, maybe more, at those extreme pressures. So there will be minimal maintenance, you know, after these upgrades. And the same thing on Revere Street with the new water mains. That'll all be ductile. And the ones that we're not replacing, we're cleaning and lining, which is cement liner, and has the same, you know, lifespan as ductile after it's done. So with any water main replacement, there's really minimal maintenance to those components after they're installed.
Councilor Munson, did you want to ask a question? Same subject matter.
Not really. It was more about just getting ahead of the calls and complaints by getting ahead with the communication, and just so I just was curious about whether there was a point person to handle all these calls. Hopefully, you're not sitting there taking calls in, day out for stopping you from getting work done.
Of course. Then that's a small department. I mean, we don't have the staff that you know, we wish we had. I wish I had somebody that could just deal with the Revere Street project. It comes to the front desk, and the clerks do a great job at answering what they can, and the rest of it will get funneled.
Our suggestion I might have would be to ask for volunteers. If you give, ask for volunteers to do a foot, like literally by foot, door to door, updates every 2 weeks. I'm sure we could find people that would use the steps for their daily count and get those letters out, and you would make a lot of people happy, and you would have a lot less phone calls.
I think we'll do the same system that we use for the CBD. There will be construction administration, and we'll put out those 2-week look-aheads, you know, through you know, all the social media means that we have, and I think it worked well for the CBD. Your business.
I think it did, you know, it did work well with the CBD, and a lot of thanks go to the chamber too, because they did a lot with the businesses. And I think somewhat on Councilor Munson's, it could be helpful if we did create, I mean, I know with social media, there's a ton of it now and everything else, but if we did create some sort of email list that we could put in a pile and distribute an email flyer to people in the neighborhood. You know, most people do have email addresses or access to somebody who does have an email address, and that would be easy enough to send out one update on a 2-week progress to everyone who chooses to be on the email list. And that's something that we could ask for Precinct 4 and the precincts that it affects. And that would be possible to do. Any other questions from the council? Questions from the audience?
Yeah,
Name-
Council President Lettieri.
Just name and precinct, Donna.
Donna Segretti Riley,
Yep.
30 Cottage Park Road, Winthrop.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me. It was on the notification. I found the town councilors, the town manager's blog extremely effective. You know, and I think you might have mentioned that so quick, but you talk rather fast.
No,
and
I
missed
didn't,
that.
but there is a lot of
that
social
is-
media.
That is, I love that blog, I really do, because it lets you know what's going on pretty much in a lot of areas. So incorporating it into the town manager's blog, I think would be helpful with the communication issue too.
Thank you, Donna. Anyone else in the public? Yes. Karen?
Karen Chavez, Precinct 2. I understand these are two separate projects. This 2912 and the other one, they're two separate projects. So is it two separate borrowings? The first one you said was gonna cost between 35 and 43 cents on the rate.
Correct.
what is the second one gonna cost on the rate? And this, as Mr. Callis said, this has not even gone out for bid yet.
Correct.
So we'll probably have water sewer increase rates before this.
Correct.
So what are you guesstimating now over the next 4 or 5 years?
I would estimate on this piece, on the 1.6 million, somewhere around 23 cents.
All right, so that's,
And if the borrowings were done, you know, because you have interest rates going up and everything,
Right,
but the
right.
borrowings would be done to lock it in. And, you know, on most of these bonds, the initial payment isn't due for a couple of years anyway. But yeah, so you're looking at potentially, if you add those two up, somewhere around high 50 cents, 60 cent increase for these two projects.
Correct.
That does not include a potential yearly increase, which is set by the town manager. Which I'm sure, since the beginning of the fiscal year is July 1st, I'm sure probably in the first meeting in July, you'll have some sort of presentation to discuss that. But this is it's an infrastructure project that is a separate cost. It's a bonding cost, correct?
so between this and other little rate increases, we could see an increase of as much as 75 cents to $1.
I don't think you would see this increase for probably 2 fiscal years.
Okay, okay.
But, yeah, I mean, I can't tell you exact, I could pretty much tell you exact what these would cost just by looking into it and looking at the amount we're borrowing and at the rates now. It's about 40 cents and about 23 cents.
And again, to Mr. Keller, do these projects have to be done together? Or can one be done and then, like the pumping station, be done at a later time?
So it's SRF funding, so they can be done at separate times.
Okay.
And they most likely will be.
Okay,
But the PRV station's not a roadway project, so you're not gonna
that's
have.
right, sets back.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're not gonna have impact from that.
Yep.
You know?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Back to anyone else from the council? We will close that public hearing. We will get back to both of these in old business. Now we will have a public hearing on free cash appropriation for year-end closeout. This also has been through finance and come out with a positive recommendation. This is a yearly occurrence that is just closing out accounts and moving money from one area to another. If Robbie is on, maybe Robbie would like to be heard on this, Assistant CFO.
Hey, Jim.
He's on.
Yes, Robbie.
Yeah, so is this on 41 or 42 that we're doing right now? Set year and closeout,
40.
Yeah, free cash appropriation, 42?
That's what it said.
the free cash, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so these are funds that will be in deficit by year end, based on my calculations. So in the past few years, we've been letting the Parks and Recreation Department run into the negative and then funding it on the tax rate the next year. It was about 140 2 years ago, it was about 79, almost 80 last year. And this year's looking to close out around 70 in the negative. So rather than, doing it on the tax rate where not everybody sees it, we want it to be very transparent and show, it's running in the negative. And we want to close it out this year and not, go to DOR and say, yep, we're gonna raise it on the recap. Pauline Street Revolving Fund, what really hurt that one this year, so they're still under their budget, the budget that was given to them, it's just they didn't bring in the revenue. And the reason it is much higher than usual too, even though it's within budget, is the heat and electricity down there. Heat especially, heating the gymnasium and that sort of thing, it really costs a lot this year. So that one, and we've already eaten up the money that was previously set aside, for extra items down there. I think you guys had set aside $50,000 a couple of years ago. That's all gone at this point as well. Winthrop Center Public Infrastructure Fund. That's a fund that's been around for quite a while, and it was 50 something negative last year. There was an old special article that we used to cover about half of that. and this is just the remaining part. So it's a deficit that's been hanging around on our special revenue funds for quite a while. I think was originally supposed to be charged somewhere else. Again, part to that special article, and then part somewhere else. It never happened that way. It's since before I started, it was on the list of we need to look into this. We need to clean it up. And this is just that final part that we didn't find any more funding for. And Belle Isle Marsh Grant, that's just another one of these old deficits, small. I don't know if it was a reimbursement grant or something that charged there over the years that made it go over, and it should have been moved to the general fund at the time and wasn't. So it's just a cleaning up another long-term deficit that's just been hanging out there, trying to clean up our balance sheet as a whole. And we're supposed to take the money from our remaining free cash balance for these.
And the remaining free cash, just for everyone to know, the remaining free cash balance before this is somewhere around 215,000, and after this will be slightly north of 68,000. Is that about right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And just along the lines of free cash, this will be our last chance to use free cash again until it's recertified in the late fall. When we go through the whole balance sheet submission process to the state, and they give us our new free cash numbers for next year.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Any questions from the public? All right, we will close that public hearing. I'm sorry. Karen?
Karen Chavez again, precinct 2. The heating at Pauline Street, we have to remember too, Robbie, there was 3 extra voting. It was a primary for a special election, a special election, and then the vote. So extra heating could be in that too.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't all that warm down there, I'll tell you.
Thank you, Karen. Seeing no other public comment, we will close that public hearing. We have one more public hearing, and that is the year-end general fund inter-budgetary transfers. And here is where we're going from a department that might be over budget and taking it from a department that's under budget. So just interdepartmental transfers. Robbie, do you have anything on that?
I would just, it's something we do every year. It's moving money that, we need the council's approval to do. So, some of these are running in the negative or almost in the negative. We have the snow and ice that we want to cover. Employee health insurance, especially for the school department, was well over what we had anticipated. But one thing I would caution is when you're looking at where we're pulling the money from, just because there's money in those lines this year does not mean there'll be money in those lines next year. It sometimes has to do with, open positions or, the police department has extra, but it's because they're using reserve officers, not full-time officers. So I really caution, just don't think of these as extra money sitting there. It's just money that was left this year due to whatever the circumstances were. It's not buckets of money that can be looked at next year as, this is definitely going to have extra. Just as a caution. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions on the council? Any questions from the public? Okay. We will close that public hearing. Now, we will come to public comments. One sec. So, we'll take public comment from as many as want to speak. It's a 3-minute limit. If you want to come back for a second round, you're more than welcome. We have plenty of time. First, and just name and precinct when you start.
Leonora Foley, precinct 2.
Thank you.
I had a lovely statement prepared, but now you've said something addressing the issue that I'm concerned about, which is Pride, mainly, and Juneteenth. I do appreciate your acknowledgement of the importance of these celebrations for the community, and your acknowledgement and the town council's acknowledgement of the importance of making Winthrop a diverse town. The flag issue is something that I don't really quite understand yet. I think a lot of us were disappointed that the flag was not flown this year, especially given what's going on around the country. For me, it's really important that we express that support for members of our community. So One of my concerns is that we did ask earlier in the year, a group of us asked the town to make a statement in support of transgender youth and LGBTQ youth as well. And we still have no statement from any body in town, so, any governing body, I mean. So, I'm just wondering, what's happening with that? Is anything going to happen? And as for celebrating the holidays, the flag is one very symbolic way to do that, but there are so many other ways to acknowledge the communities that need to be acknowledged and should be acknowledged, and I think that leadership is needed on that. People are able to come forward and say, we celebrate you without having to be asked. And I do appreciate the fact that you want to have an event. I would probably like a discussion, maybe not here, about maybe the appropriateness of doing something with the community policing. I'm not sure if that is something that is really appropriate. But I just want to say thank you, and we would like to see more activity on that front. So my prepared statement is not.
Thank you very much. And on your first thing on the statement, I will get back to you on that. I don't have anything for you right now. And I will say that for tomorrow night's event, it is something that we tried to put together. It's not perfect. We acknowledge that. I acknowledge that. I don't want to speak for anyone else. And I do agree that there's many ways to celebrate, whether it be a festival. It doesn't have, my personal opinion, not speaking for anyone, it doesn't have to be a flag going up in the air. There's a lot of ways to celebrate, a lot of things that needed to be celebrated in this town. And in this country is a lot of crazy things going on. And it amazes me that we have tens of thousands of people every day still coming in here because I consider us to be the greatest country in the world, and that's why these people want to come in, I believe. Thank you, Lena. Annie.
Yeah, hi, I'm Annie. I use the she series for my
Annie
pronouns.
Mahoney.
Annie Mahoney, 9 Maple Road, Winthrop, Mass. I just agree with Lee, and I just wanted to ask to reconsider for tomorrow's event the relationship between the police historically and the queer community, and obviously the Black community too, is not a healthy one at all. I'm not gonna talk about it in detail, but obviously like the Stonewall riots were a result of a raid by police. So it just seems bizarre to me to have a community policing event to also celebrate Pride and Juneteenth. So I would definitely look into that. That's all.
Oh, thank you. And it is mostly it is a Parks and Rec event that is sponsored by, but thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Celeste Rivera Hewitt, Precinct 1. I'm also the organizer of East Boston Pride flag raising event. We just celebrated our 9th year very successfully, and I did jot down kind of a few thoughts. So as you alluded to, I think adopting a very clear and concise policy can ward against any frivolous lawsuits. Some language, I'm not a legal genius, but some language including only those observations that are federally observed, such as Pride, Juneteenth, et cetera, can make it very clear to folks that want to launch any kind of frivolous lawsuit. Regardless of possibility of being sued, the city of Boston does continue to celebrate Pride, and as does East Boston, have their own individual Pride event, and there are many across the city. It's important to note that while we fly the Pride flag, it is to send a clear message about what we stand for, not only to those in the LGBTQ+ community, but to all who view it. We're inclusive and we are safe. The same reasoning can be applied to flying the flag in the observation of Juneteenth or other federal public and cultural days of observation. It's also important to note that many who identify as LGBTQ+ do not do so publicly, nor do they necessarily attend barbecues, whether officially designated as Pride events or such as those that flyers with rainbows on them are handed out. Many also do not do so openly with family or close friends because of fear of rejection. Having the symbol publicly displayed throughout Pride Month is not only a way to share with folks who may feel isolated that they are not alone, it is a way for the town of Winthrop to illustrate that we are inclusive and welcoming community, and there's no reason for anyone to have to feel as though they don't belong because of who they love. It's really that simple. It may take a bit of political coverage for Winthrop to adopt a flag policy that is inclusive of the Pride flag, but the return will be much more beneficial than any perceived threat of lawsuits. So thank you for your consideration, and I hope that we can really, you know, I'm volunteering to be part of a task force that helps you guys put together the policy, because I think it's really, really important. You know, I came today loaded with rainbows and buttons, not because I support the commercialization of pride, but because I am acutely aware of how much a teeny little tin symbol can mean. You know, I think we have a few more buttons floating around here. I'm a mom, I'm an aunt. Our children don't necessarily know what lies within our hearts. You know, we always think, of course, our children know that we love them, our family know that we love them, but they don't necessarily know that they're safe with us. And really taking that step to exert that political courage and personal courage and share our sentiments across the town and in our homes and in our friend and family groups is so important in making these kids feel safe and loved. So thank you.
Thank you. And we have begun to look at policies, and as simple as Wakefield has a relatively new flag policy. It's literally 2 pages long. And it's pretty basic. It's pretty much on point. My one concern with it is it's a little ambiguous, and it gives all different kind of variations, but it's a start, right? It's a step. But thank you for that. Yes?
May I approach the table to speak?
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Ian Page of Precinct 2. I would like to begin by saying that I am a member of the LGBT community, as well as a majority of my friends. Last year, the pride flag raised in front of the town hall meant a great deal to all of us. That flag is a symbol of a movement that began on June 28th, 1970. That date marked the first pride parades, which were held in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where thousands of people gathered to demonstrate for human rights. That date also commemorated the first anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, during a police raid on the Stonewall Inn, which was a New York City bar, which was a haven for the LGBT community, the queer folks in the inn chose to fight back. Despite police raids on gay bars at the time growing increasingly brutal, and more frequent without cause, despite homosexuality at the time remaining illegal in 49 out of the 50 United States, and despite many owners of those gay bars being mafia members who would bribe less than honorable members of the police force to look the other way, and or blackmail their queer patrons by threatening to out them, which was at that time no less than a call to violence. Despite all of this, those members of my community chose to fight back, and the lasting impact of their bravery and sacrifice is that myself and so many others get to live authentically today. I have a greater range of rights and privileges as a human being because of those people. And I believe that in honor of their sacrifices made for a better world, that the pride flag is worth flying. The actions of those people echoed the founding principles of our national identity, liberating oneself from tyrannical rule and pursuing happiness. However, the work of people like Stormy DeLarvery, Sylvia Rivera, and Marsha P. Johnson is not done. According to PBS.org, many members of my community are 4 times more likely to be victims of violent crime than those who are not LGBTQ+. According to the Human Rights Campaign, 2020 was the deadliest year on record for transgender individuals and gender nonconforming people. Blatantly discriminatory legislation is being passed all across the country, and members of my community are being made to fear for their lives and the continued existence of our community. Many of Winthrop's citizens, but especially our youth, are a part of the LGBT community, but they are also a part of your community. I am also a part of your community, our community. We see what's happening and we are scared. I believe that to show those members of our community that fall under the queer umbrella, that we not only want them to exist, but we want them to exist loudly. We want them to exist without fear that they won't be accepted for who and what they are. That we want them to be in our community, which as of right now is one of somewhere between 10 and 15 communities in Massachusetts, which does not have a pride flag on display. That the very least we can do for those members of our community is to fly a flag. So I would like to thank the council for taking the time to hear my remarks. And I would also like to thank those in the community who continue to fight for diversity, equity, inclusion, and the broader advancement of human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Yes.
May I approach as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I am precinct 4, I think, Stephen's precinct, and he's not here, but I'll just approach and talk to everybody.
6.
Or 6, no, I'm 6. I'm in the motion spray. Is that 6? I think it's 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your name, please?
And your name?
Katrina. So, I am also a member of this community. I am very lucky in that I pass. I am married to a wonderful gentleman. We have been married for 20 years of monogamy, but I still identify as bisexual and queer. I pass. I work in this community. I live in this community. I have worked with lots of youth in this community. What we are talking about here is safety. The safety of our children and our children's friends. And as a mother, that is more important to me than anything else. Just take a minute to take a breath. I would like to point out that I'm saying this on camera for WCAT to broadcast to all, which is dangerous. I could lose my job. I could be targeted. But I feel like since I pass in this community, that I'm able to do this and not worry for my safety. That being said, there is a member of our audience at this very moment who is using a personal cell phone to film all these statements. I don't know if any of you have noticed this individual, but I am worried about where is that video going to end up. We're all on WCAT for everyone to see. But is somebody going to put us up on Facebook and say, these are the people in Winthrop who are standing up for gay rights? These are the people we need to target? Maybe. I don't know. All I know is members of the Lgbtqia+ community are, as Ian Page said, more likely to experience crime. Among trans youth, more likely to commit suicide. And I think that, as other people have said, the simplest act of displaying a flag of solidarity is something very simple that we can do, to just say, we don't know who you are, but you are out there and you matter, and we welcome you. And I have put my safety and possibly my job on the line by saying this tonight. But I've decided I can no longer be quiet while the youth I work with are considering suicide in this community as an option because of how terrified they are of who they are and how that is being accepted or not accepted in this community. That's all I have to say.
Yes, Suzanne.
Hi everyone, I'm Suzanne Leonard. I don't know my precinct. I'm 378 Revere Street. I will make these remarks brief. Over the past 2 years, since COVID started, I've really started to think a lot about the meaning of community and the meaning of being a citizen in a town. It was part of the reason I ran for town office. I'm not speaking tonight as a member of said town office, but I am speaking tonight as somebody who really felt that they wanted to be a part of this community and they wanted to have their voice heard in this community. And I just want to say that I fear that there are 2 things that are happening this month, right? The lack of recognition of the Juneteenth celebration, which we haven't talked so much about tonight, I don't think. I did go to the restroom very briefly, so it's possible that was mentioned. But there are 2 communities in our town that are well represented that I don't think feel the same sort of inclusion that I felt. And I just want to say that for me, stepping up for public office has made me feel so much a part of this community in a way that I've never felt before. And I just worry. Honestly, I just worry that if we don't show a sense of solidarity and inclusion to folks, frankly, who don't look like me, whose lives probably don't look like mine, that those folks are not going to want to step up and be heard in public office and be part of this community. And again, I'm going to state the obvious. If you look around this room tonight, we all look the same in some ways. I know our lives don't look the same. I know our practices don't look the same. But if you look around, we all look a lot the same. And I don't think that's exactly a representative of this community. And I think that everything that we in this room tonight can do, and you as the council can do, to make sure that people who maybe don't look like us, or don't believe in the same God, or don't have the same sexual practices that we do, feel that they too can step up and be leaders in this community. That is what I'm asking for tonight. And so I think a flag rising is only a very, very small part of what I'm asking for, which is that we do something to make sure everyone in this community feels that they can not only be heard, but that they can lead, right? That they can lead in this town. And I think that's really important. It's really important that we make sure that everybody feels not only that they're going to be recognized, but that that they're included, and that they could step up, and they could run for public office, and that they could shape the values and the integrity of this town. Because I know they're here. I know they're here, and I know they want to be heard. And so I will get off my soapbox now, but thank you for recognizing me, Councilor Lettieri. And welcome to our new town manager. I really look forward to working with you. So
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you for your work.
I appreciate that you.
I'm sorry, just name and precinct.
Anne Marie on, by Pico Beach.
Okay.
I appreciate that you feel it's an exclusive town. I have to say that hasn't been a real experience for a lot of people. When the schools went online, my daughter came to me with some of the things one of her teachers were saying that were concerning. I listened in on the class. The teacher was absolutely flat out wrong with some of the propaganda she was spewing. I brought this up with the school and never heard back. My daughter's in a new school, and the way they're handling things like Juneteenth and Pride and whatnot, night and day, absolutely night and day. So I think you really need to examine your position and your privilege and whether or not you're listening to what is actually going on. And this was in a classroom, a middle school classroom.
Thank you. Debbie?
Yeah, Debbie Neal Keegan, Precinct 5. May I approach?
Absolutely.
Excuse me, mic gets up in my throat. So I do have a formal testimony prepared. First, I want to say I'm a learner in this space as well, and I honor and bow to all of you who spoke. Thank you. Good evening, Councilor President Lettieri, Town Council members. Welcome to Winthrop as our new town manager, Mr. Marino. After meeting with you, I believe you care about our community and want to do the best for all of us. I come to you today as a resident, constituent, mother, and grandmother to express my deep concern that the town of Winthrop appears to be taking no visible steps to recognize two important events this month. Pride, which has celebrated LGBTQ+ communities for more than 50 years, and Juneteenth, which commemorates the end of chattel slavery and is now a federal holiday. The President, our governor, state officials, and the vast majority of mayors and city managers across the Commonwealth have acknowledged and celebrated Pride and Juneteenth with special events and marches. Beautiful flags fly this month across the state and in our own community in homes and businesses. They provide an important visual statement of support to individuals, cultures, and communities that have and continue to experience systemic harm, violence, and a relentless assault on their dignity and safety. These flags are symbols of our commitment to these members of the Winthrop community, a commitment to recognize their humanity, struggle, and their brilliance. I believe that our town leaders have a responsibility to host Pride and Juneteenth flag-raising ceremonies or other celebrations to show support for our community members. By neglecting this duty, the town leadership has missed an opportunity not only to show support, but to observe, listen, and be educated.
Instead of staying silent on these important civil rights movements of our day, I encourage our town leaders to take this moment and embrace our chance to demonstrate our town's inclusiveness. We are, in fact, a community that cares deeply about all of our residents, businesses, and visitors. Why don't we put this commitment to community on display? To those town council members and others here in this group who stand with us in wanting to fly a flag for Pride and Juneteenth and valuing community members who have too often been silenced, I thank you for your leadership and voice. Our community will continue to evolve. I hope town leadership with our new administration will be stewards of that evolution. Now is a time that requires every one of us to be speaking out and condemning the growing acts of violence and dangerous hatred towards our neighbors who hold marginalized identities. I ask that before your next meeting, the town council work with the town manager's office to recognize these events, taking action to send a clear message that Winthrop is a respectful, safe, and inclusive community for all of our residents. Thank you very much.
Before we get back to you, we'll just go around. Yes.
Todd Sacco, Precinct 2. I just want to say for those who are quivering in their boots right now, you have nothing to worry about. I don't waste my time with that nonsense. But the other part of it is, from such an inclusive group, I've never seen so many scowls, stares, and miserable looks in my life towards me. Such judgment from people who aren't judgy. Pretty funny and ironic, isn't it? I'm good, thank you.
Lisa.
President, Lisa Albertini, Precinct 6. I have to say I was distressed that Winthrop didn't honor, celebrate, or acknowledge either of these holidays, and I only got more distressed the more I listened to this tonight. And I don't think it's only about flags. The flag is super, super important, but it's about making a clear statement and being very clear about our values and who we are as a town. For context, I tried to learn a little bit from our website. I went on our town website. It was on Facebook. There was a notice that Town Hall was closed on Juneteenth. It had a link to Juneteenth events that were in Boston, zero about anything happening in Winthrop. If you go on our website, there were 3 mentions of Juneteenth, that the Town Hall was closed. The significance of Juneteenth to Winthrop is that the Town Hall gets to be closed. And there were 2 other comments about Juneteenth, which was that we weren't going to do street sweeping because it was a holiday, so they weren't going to do that. I looked on our website for anything about Pride Month, zero. The words Pride Month weren't even there. So we didn't even bother acknowledging or celebrating or anything like that. So then I said, okay, what about our neighbors? So here's Revere. This is Revere. The city of Revere celebrates Juneteenth. Flyers, lawn games, programs, music, barbecue, all of that. They also, for Pride Month, they talked about the anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. They talked about the June 28th, 1970, the first, as the gentleman said earlier, the first Pride Parade all that long ago. I said, okay, we'd like to compare ourselves to Marblehead. Let's look at what Marblehead's doing. Marblehead, Juneteenth flag raising ceremony, front page, right? So they have a whole series of events, including that the Juneteenth flag will be raised by the Marine Cadets, and there's a program there by their school kids. There was a pride flag raising also. I started to look at other communities, and honestly, I got too discouraged. It was too disappointing. It's not who we are as a town in Winthrop. Happily, I looked at Ipswich, which is where our new town manager is from. And there was a lovely reflection on the observance of Juneteenth by the town on the Ipswich website, which was very nice, and I really appreciate it. There were also resources on the Ipswich Reds website about Juneteenth, a whole number of them, including in the select person's package, I believe it was. They had information on the Pride resources, they had information on the Human Rights Commission, and in the select person's packages, it talked about the fact that Juneteenth there would be a ceremony on Juneteenth, at which there would be an installation of 101 placards with the names of victims of systemic racism over the past 6 years. And following the installation, there would be an 8-minute, 46-second moment of silence. So I really appreciate and I'm hopeful that our community really important value statements about our community. But I have to say, you know, marginalized people, these people have been marginalized for a really long time. And this is not a one-day event, it's not a barbecue. I appreciate what you're trying to do tomorrow. I also appreciate, Council President, that you said, you know, it's not adequate, it's a start, right? But it's something that we have to remember and take much more seriously. I was personally embarrassed that the pride flag was not flown. The ceremony last year was spectacular. It was really warm and wonderful, and it brought the community together. I was more than embarrassed that the only acknowledgement on the town website on Juneteenth was that town hall would be closed. This is in a town where last year, 2 of our own African-American residents were murdered. And we don't say anything about Juneteenth, acknowledging the struggle that that community has been through. And it's really upsetting. I'm trying not to be negative here, I'm just reflecting on the reality of where we are. We're better than this as a community. And I know there's been a time of transition in town managers, and certainly Chief Delahunty has done a great job in many ways, and we're excited to have our new town manager. But this isn't about them as much as it's about the council leadership, starting with our council president and all of you here. This is your job, and it's your responsibility to set the example and kind of require us to be the community that we are. I'd like to, in addition to Debbie's request, I would like to ask that the town council, I've talked with nobody about this, that the town council vote tonight to put a letter in this week's transcript about which can be put together really quickly about the importance of both of these celebrations to our town and to our community and to you as a council. And I'd love to see a vote here tonight by town council to do that and put something together. I think the deadline for the transcript is tomorrow, which can easily be done, I'm sure. You've got a great writer and a new town manager. So I appreciate the comments. Also, for many of you may know that Senator Edwards is sponsoring a barbecue right to end Pride Month, which is it's just on the 29th. I think it was like hard to find her. So I want to thank her for her support as well. Thank you.
Anyone who hasn't been heard that wishes to speak? I'll get back. I just want to give everybody a chance before we get back. Lucy. Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy Floyd. I live on Lowell Road. She, her pronouns. Thank you for everyone who shared tonight. I feel like really, I'm getting a little nervous right now. It's hard to be like vulnerable and talking up here. But clearly there's a huge sense of urgency around this issue, and I feel like we've seen from this town a lack of urgency, and it shouldn't take people coming here and sharing their traumas, their kids' traumas, our own town's traumas for action to happen. So in lack of action, I think is just as telling as action can be. So just want to stress the urgency.
Thank you. Dawn?
Donna Secretti, Ryder, Precinct 5. I just want to talk about resources that already exist. I know someone mentioned, the town council as a whole working with the town manager, but we have already, because I and many of the people here in this room worked very hard back in 2020 to establish a human rights commission known as the Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. And we have a vehicle, we have a resource. So working with that commission, it isn't just, the council and the town manager. We could I think we have even a member of that commission here tonight, but utilizing that and including them, and I think we can come up with some wonderful stuff. Could I just ask one little question? What time is the function tomorrow?
It's 5 to 7, I believe.
5 to 7. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Public comment, there'll be a second round of public comment if anyone chooses to stick around, but anybody else, anybody who's spoken before? Okay.
Zoom
Co-
attendance?
I'm sorry?
Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Denise, is there anyone on Zoom?
We have one. La Rochelle Bybus, La Rochelle. Can you hear me? You have to unmute. I'm not unmuted.
Anybody else?
Yep, Kelly Gold. Just raised her hand. Kelly?
Hi, good evening. Kelly Gall. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Kelly.
Hello?
Yes, Kelly? Are we muted?
Thank you.
Oh.
Kelly Gall, Precinct 2. I am a member of the LGBT community. My wife and I have lived here for 20 years on our home here on Fort Road. And I just have one question for the council. And I'm curious as to why neither one of the very important events were acknowledged this month.
Thank you.
I have no answer for you for that right now. I know we have tried to put something together, and again, late acknowledged. We had in terms of the flag, we had a policy on the agenda several weeks back, which was never acted on as we await communication from KP. But other than that, I have no excuse.
Well, what I would like to do is offer to everyone on the council and council president that I am open and willing to sit down one-on-one with everyone and anyone who would like to talk about my experience here in town and what we would like to do to make Winthrop a more inclusive environment. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kelly, and I will take you up on that. Happy to talk. Denise?
Yep. Nope, nobody else.
Lisa?
Sorry, one more question. Lisa Lgbtq, Precinct 6. When, just on the legal issue, I think this is a quite different case in question than in Boston, as I understand it. But how long ago was our council?
I reached out it's 2 days after the ruling came out. I'm not exactly sure when that was.
So a month.
And we were told that they had over 100 other communities reaching out to them for clarification. They did get back to me on, not on a stringent policy, but on guidelines. And what their guidelines said was if we were going, it had to be a pretty, as I think's been spoken, pretty specific policy. If you, I'll just give a summary, basically. I'm not sure word for word what was said, but basically, if you allowed a whatever flag, you would have to allow anybody else's request for.
Yeah, that's because the Boston case was about a third flag that the city put up for people to request for any wide variety of issues, a flag being flown. It had nothing to do with like a town flag or a federal holiday. It was a completely separate
Well,
thing.
the other thing with the flag that we have found out too, from doing some research, was that, in order for us to get to a flag policy, if, when and if we do that, it would be very prudent to have I don't know how to say, a three-flag system, a three-pole system, where you would, because there are certain, if you go by the American flag etiquette, there are certain things that you should and should not fly under an American flag. So it would behoove us, as we discuss this, to get a three-pole system where you would have the United States flag in the middle, you would have a state or POW flag on one side, and then potentially you would have a third side to promote other interests.
We're gonna have just like a time frame to work through that and maybe even get a new lawyer into, because, can we just have a time frame that we're gonna be able to work this through? Because other things will come up, right? It would be great to.
Thank you. All right, we're going to close public comment. I'll ask Councilor Ayala. for a comment.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Is that what you were asking? Oh.
Okay, so I just want to say again, Katrina Donovan, Precinct 6, Dolphin Road, Dolphin Ave. Most of us here tonight gave our name and our full address. And the member of our audience who was filming us, each individually, has left. I know he said we gave him scowls, and I apologize if we scowled at him. But if there is anyone who gave their name and address tonight and spoke in favor of the GLBTQ community, I just want it to be noticed that if any of those people experience any hate crimes or any scowling at them at their place of residence, just be noticed that we all gave our address, and I'm not sure that gentleman did when he spoke. Thank you. One more thing. I am speaking as a private citizen. I know I've put my job on the line. I do not want to lose my job, so I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'm not sure if I said that before, but I just needed to say that now, too.
Thank you. Councilor Aiello?
I don't know where to begin except to understand that we as a council have failed the community. I hate to say it, but we have failed miserably. Councilor Honan was brave enough in May, I think, to propose that we discuss the potential for having a statement of support for LGBTQ youth in particular, but to all of the community. She was rejected. Other members of the council implored that this item be put on an agenda. It was made very clear to us that council members, except the town council president, are unable to place something on the agenda, and it has never appeared on the agenda. And those are the facts. We keep saying that with the flag, we're hearing this is possible, that's possible, that there's a law firm out there that we hire who doesn't seem to be able to come up with an answer. When I've hired law firms, if they don't come in front of me in 24 hours, I fire them. Right? It's unacceptable what we accept for not bringing to resolution the kind of support we need to bring. I don't understand it, and I'm employing all of us to do better, including myself. We really do need to stand up and support both the communities that we have been discussing today, the LGBT community and the Black community. It's important to remember we've had, in this country, slavery based upon race. Slavery's existed since mankind started. But race-based slavery, invented here. We've had slavery here for more years than we haven't had slavery. In this place called America. And we can't acknowledge and advance and celebrate Juneteenth. We have to sort of make it up because we have people who got pissed off at us. It's disgraceful on all of us. Do we need to maybe get better training to turn us into better human beings? What do we need? I don't understand. You're the town council president. You should be driving this agenda. We shouldn't be playing defense, recovery at the last minute. It's just disgraceful. And you talk about kids looking at us and saying, these are people who ran for office, who said, I will represent you. And I'm pointing at myself. We've done nothing. Leave it at that.
No more public comment.
Oh. There's a second one though, right?
There is a second one. And I will just say that at every council meeting since I've been council president, and it has never been done before, I've given every council the opportunity to speak whatever they would like at the end of the council meetings in terms of any public relations, in terms of any support for anything they'd like to do. And I was asked to put something on the agenda a few months back, which I refused. I did not put it on the agenda, and I take responsibility for that. But that's because it was something that had nothing to do with the state of Massachusetts. It was something that the state of Massachusetts believed in terms of had a law against what it was saying. It was not changing anything from the state. So I stand by my decision on that, and I do give every councilor the opportunity to come before us with anything they choose at the end of every meeting, and no one has done that. So we will move on to correspondence. Committee reports. Finance Committee?
Yep, so the Finance Committee met last Tuesday. Finance Committee met last Tuesday, and we discussed 4 motions. All 4 were in the public hearings earlier tonight, and all 4 were passed through committee with positive recommendations.
Okay, and we will go over that in old business. Town Manager's report.
Thank you, Council President. As we saw in the notice we put out, the ferry is down right now for maintenance. It's up in Gloucester getting some work done on the props and some cleaning things done. It should be back later this week. We did have a meeting, Council President and I attended with regard to the tunnel closure that Senator Edwards put together. We thank her for that. We were looking for additional monies for the ferries at that meeting. We gave a lot of concerns about, medical transports and things like that. But one of the things we asked for is if they wanted us to run the ferries more time and on the weekends, that we needed additional funding. So we did put that request in, and we're looking to get those additional funds so we can have more money to not only pay for captains, but also to run the ferry service on the weekends. So, especially as the summer tunnel, project and the closure starts to ramp up. As I stated last meeting, our VSO, our Veteran Service Officer, Ro was leaving. We're having a farewell in acknowledgement of that this Thursday, June 23rd, in this room at noontime for anybody who wants to attend. We had an update meeting with Kessel Booth with the architect firm, KBA, with regard to the public safety building. They're putting together some proposals with regard to a combined facility close to where the existing fire station sits, right around the corner here near the police station. And they're working on some additional plans that once we get them, we can distribute out to the council members. We've already started union negotiations updated. We started with the fire department, we're working with them, and we're also scheduling time with the other 3 unions to try to get those contracts under agreement. Park and Rec study, I know was asked by Councilor Belcher at the last meeting. Park and Rec study is underway. Berry and Dunn, the procurement concern was Berry and Dunn is on the state bid list, so we were able to just go to contract with them. Town Council did review the contract, got it back to us, and it's going back to them for a couple of tweaks, but we should have that signed up relatively quickly, and that'll be underway. Just a reminder, I know we didn't bring it up yet, we did do a press release on it. There is the memorial celebration for Ramona Cooper and David Green this weekend, Sunday, over at the corner of Shirley Street and Veterans Road. We'll be having a service, planting a couple of trees in their honor, and that will begin at 9 a.m. And I think that's all I have for now, unless there's specific questions from the council members.
Council questions. Councilor Aiello.
With regard to the public safety building, before you got here, we have been talking about the need to examine not only potential additional sites for a combined facility, but to also think about sites for separate facilities, given the lack of big parcels in this town, and also concerns that some, including myself, had raised about putting all of our public safety first responders together. We're going to be looking at sites that allow police and fire to be in different locations, and it's also critical because I know the fire, I'm a member of Councilwoman Flockhart's Public Safety Commission. We did a tour. The fire stations are in horrible, horrible shape, almost need immediate help. But that's in an environment where we have over $100 million of deferred maintenance and replacement needs across the spectrum, whether it's school buildings, parks, water and sewer system, et cetera, et cetera. So we need choices about whether or not we can afford or want to build an entire giant complex, or maybe stage them and do the first complex first, and then a number of years down the road do a second complex. So is that alternative? Would there be a separate part of the work that you have assigned?
They haven't given us that yet, but that's something that I will ask them to look at in the feasibility study for sure. I know we've got a limited number of sites, so we'll have to try to get.
When you have a consultant, you ask the consultant, what do you want them to do? So, again, the question is, have we asked them to look?
I haven't yet. We have just looked at I had an initial meeting with them, and we only looked at what they were already working on, which was the combined site.
Can we ask them to look
We
at
absolutely
specific
can,
sites?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If that's the will of the council, absolutely.
Council Flockhart.
Thank you. And I would say that there is urgency on replacing that fire department.
Absolutely.
I mean, as it is, they've divided their equipment because the current buildings won't hold it.
Right.
And that is it. Council Munson.
And just to reiterate, this event we're having on Sunday at 9 a.m. on
Yes.
Veterans and Shirley.
Yep.
And that will be actual planting of trees.
Correct. The holes are already being
Fantastic.
prepped, and we'll have the trees ready to go.
And the plaques are already designated and made.
Yes, in-house.
That's wonderful. I mean, I think that this would be a great opportunity to talk about Juneteenth and to be able to speak about that kind of I mean, this is a major national issue, and I think it's great that we're doing it. Was this both public and privately funded?
Yeah, the trees are, with, with the donation money, and then obviously we'll supply the labor for the DPW and
That's
planting
great.
the trees and things like
It's a
that.
great
so.
team effort. I'm glad. I was really happy that that came together, and the timing could have been better the previous weekend, but it's still happening, and it's still a positive sign that we're working in the right direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tony. The school department report, there has not been a school committee meeting. Since our last meeting, there is a school committee meeting tomorrow night, but I can report that today was the last day of school for Winthrop Public Schools. And I know the kids are happy about that, and I don't know if the parents are as happy, but it was a very good year. And again, it was a great graduation ceremony a couple of weeks ago, which we did speak about, and it's incredible what our children of this community are capable of doing, and they show it and prove it to us all the time. Old business. Town appropriates a sum of $2,912,000 to pay for the cost of constructing and reconstructing water mains on Revere Street, Crest Ave, and Grover's Ave. Council Fusillo, did this come out of committee with positive recommendation?
Yes, it did.
All right, and we did have a public hearing on it earlier, and we did discuss this at our last council meeting. Is there any questions or concerns on this item? This has been advertised for the required amount of time, which is why we waited till tonight to vote on it.
My only question, sorry.
Let me just read the motion into, do you have the text of the
Yeah, I have the
loan
text of
order?
it. Yeah,
If you
I
could
can-
read
yep.
the.
So text the motion. I move that the town council vote to authorize the town council loan order or take any other action thereto. Town council loan order. That the town appropriate the sum of $2,912,000 to pay the costs of constructing and reconstructing water mains on Revere Street, Crest Avenue, and Grover Street, including all costs incidental and related thereto. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL Massachusetts General Law C-44 and or MGL C-29C, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore. And the treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to borrow all or portion of such amounts from the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, established pursuant to MGLC 29C, and in connection therewith, the treasurer is authorized to enter a loan agreement with the trust, and the town manager is authorized to enter into project regularity agreement with the Department of Environmental Protection, and that the town manager is authorized to take any other action necessary to carry out this project.
All right, it's been read into the record. We have had discussion on it.
I thought you were looking for a motion to approve.
Oh, no. It's coming out of Finance with a positive recommendation, does not need a second. Any further discussion on it? If not, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero? President Lettieri?
Yes. Motion passes. Second item under old business, the town appropriates a sum of $1,633,750 to pay cost of reconstructing and making extraordinary repairs to the Revere Street pressure regulating valve station. Councilor Fusillo.
Yes, so the text of the motion, I move that the town council vote to authorize the town council loan order or take any other action thereto for the amount of $1,633,750. I do motion that we waive the reading because it's the same.
There's a motion to waive the reading. There's a second by Councilor Aiello. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. So this is very similar to the last motion. We did discuss it and have a public hearing on it. We've advertised it for the specific amount of time. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, a roll call vote, please.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero? President Lettieri?
Yes. Motion is passed. Free cash appropriation for year-end closeout. Councilor Fusillo.
I move that the town council vote to appropriate certified free cash and transfer to the below funds that are anticipated to end of year in deficit or take any other action thereto. We discussed this earlier in public hearing. However, these the accounts are the Recreation Enterprise Fund, the Pauline Street Revolving Fund, Winthrop Center Public Infrastructure Fund, and the Belle Isle Marsh Seaport Grant Fund. And this is going to leave our ending free cash balance at $68,136.25. And it was a positive recommendation.
Yes, it did come with a positive recommendation. The free balance before this transaction is $215,731, so this is roughly $150,000 in transfers, $70,000 to recreation, $50,000 to Pauline Street Revolving Fund, $26,200 to Winthrop Center Public Infrastructure Fund, and $1,394.75 to Belle Isle. This did come out of committee with positive recommendation. We did have a public hearing on it. We did advertise it. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero? President Lettieri?
Yes, motion passes. Year-end fund interbudgetary transfers. Councilor Fusillo.
I move that the town council vote to modify the following general fund budgets to facilitate the June 30th, 2022 closing of financial year 2022 or take any other action relative thereto. These funds are coming from, I'll start with where they're coming from, and it's personal, town council personnel, town manager legal services, should I read all of them?
No, you don't have to read them. They're coming from about 20 different departments, between town council, town managers lines, finance lines, town clerk lines, regional dispatch, municipal hearings, and several other departments. And these are going to departments that we believe will be in deficit, and this is just to cover them. It's interdepartmental budgets. It's not affecting the budget. It's not requiring additional funds. It's not taking money from reserve accounts. The total of these interbudgetary transfers are $533,515.41. This did come out of committee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero? President Lettieri?
Yes, motion is passed. The zone flood resiliency language change, we did receive a recommendation from the Winthrop Planning Board on this. Are we ready to vote on this? Why don't?
Yeah, Rachel's had to give a
Rachel?
brief, yeah.
So we did receive a recommendation from the planning board with some adjustments to it, if you'd like to just follow up.
Definitely. So, I have a quick PowerPoint. Are you okay with sharing? Take your time. I'll just sort of do a quick recap. So this grant was awarded back in 2020. It was funded through the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and we partnered with MAPC on this. I have our partner in here, and she's helped move this forward. This went before the planning board several times, and it's proposed zoning language additions that focuses on designing coastal community infrastructure for climate change, and the focus of it is just bringing more acknowledgement, more reference, and just kind of putting in the forefront flooding and flooding and flood resiliency, and making Winthrop a little bit more aware of the challenges that flooding brings to us. No, sorry. So we have a brief presentation, and we can kind of skim through it just so everybody's aware of everything. If there's any final questions, there was one after, and we'll get to it. There was one small adjustment after speaking with the building commissioner in the by right table. So we'll touch on that as well in the PowerPoint, and we can be pretty quick. It's okay. The email was around like 4 or 5 days. It's okay.
Rachel, just so I understand, we can vote this at the next meeting. You and I talked about this today, right?
Do a
Time frame on this?
So we do have, yeah, I mean, if we have to, if there's some people need more time,
We just don't have language for motion, that's why I don't have language here. I didn't know
okay.
if
Did that have to come from
it should have.
planning board?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess it could have come from the
Oh,
planning board.
okay.
But that's, I mean, if it's, I don't see any problems with this at all. But I didn't know if there was a time urgency to do this.
If it could go to our next meeting if,
Okay.
and
I
maybe.
mean, I could even add it, we're having a special meeting with only one item on the agenda. I could add this to Thursday's meeting if we have language and if that's sufficient for you guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, we definitely have some flexibility, for sure. And I think, I don't know if we're able to, briefly present on it, then Ann doesn't probably have to come back.
Oh,
for
no,
the
you
next
don't,
meeting.
you probably wouldn't need to even do that yourself either, but you could do a
Okay.
brief presentation now and we would be ready to vote with language on Thursday.
Is this what you had, Rachel?
It was a PowerPoint. This was the cover. It's okay.
Did the counselors have any questions? It sounded like you were maybe ready.
I mean,
Go
I've
forward.
read it, I know I'm comfortable with the recommendations from the planning board, I didn't know.
I did want to
Yeah.
say, sorry.
That's the whole thing.
That's good. Thank
I
you.
did want to say, I thought the additions were fantastic. I was very impressed. I thought they were thorough, and I was very happy to see them. Thank you for your work.
Yeah, so we'll run through this really quickly, or is that okay, or?
That's fine.
All right, perfect. We'll run through this, and we'll be really quick. So again, this grant was to focus on and kind of, that's my notes, that's all right. What is it? If you go to slideshow at the top. All the way, no, all the way at the top.
No, she can't see it. She's got a Zoom link here, Bob, blocking it, that's all.
Yeah.
You need that to the side. Or you can bat it. So right up here.
She's
Slide
adding
over.
she's adding to your presentation right now.
Begins from there. There we go. There we go.
Thank you. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
Now you're asking.
Use the arrows, sideways, that one.
So, I can jump into it as we figure it out. So, obviously, Winthrop's very vulnerable to flooding. It's only going to increase. Perfect, thank you. About 41% of Winthrop's within a flood zone, and as of 2019, there were $7 million in damage claims as a result of flooding, which makes, at that time, Winthrop was 8th in highest damage claims in the state. So it's a pretty big problem. And this zoning language additions was just addressing flooding, improving regulations for better protection, as in addressing kind of long-term concerns. There's flooding reference in WIN 2030 and in past MVP reports, and this is kind of addressing that and bringing that to light. Their zoning language has 3 main goals, and they're ensuring, goal 1 is ensuring that development review process considers future flooding impacts. The second is assisting homeowners who wish to protect their properties from flood damage. And the third is encouraging the facilities in the installation and use of climate smart technologies. We'll jump around a little bit, and you can kind of follow along in the document that you have, or not. But we'll sort of jump around to keep the language together within each goal. But I'll tell you which page we're on as we move forward.
Next slide, I think. Basically, to ensure that the development projects consider future flooding, all the places where site plans are required, we'll be asking people to show on a map what is projected with 2.4 feet of sea level rise, both the extent of flooding and the depth of flooding. And then, along with that, give the permit granting authority, whether that's the town council, the planning board, or the zoning board of appeals, the ability to consider, to be able to condition projects, keeping that in mind. So one thing to know is that the language doesn't either require or forbid any kind of specific action, either on the part of the applicants or on the part of the town. But what it really is designed to do is ensure that every project that goes through zoning review identifies and at least considers future flood risk. And it gives, again, the town authorities the ability to take that into account as you're conditioning projects. Next slide.
That might have been the slide again.
Okay. Oh, there we go. So this is just well, I'll show you something closer up, but this is what the slides look like. So on the left slide is showing you the annual chance of flooding with 2.4 feet of sea level rise, and on the right side is showing you the depth. And then these are just closer in maps so that you can get a sense of that. And the 2.4 feet, these are maps that come from that the state has developed, that the state is using for planning. And essentially the idea is that takes you, things you project today, you approve today, presumably are going to be around for at least 50 years, is usually considered typical lifespan, that you're looking ahead to what will conditions be then. So the 2.4 feet is kind of a reasonable projection to look at. Next slide. Oh, and back to you.
Perfect. This is just protective language against flooding and future flooding that we've added into this article under purpose that's on page 1. And again, it's just kind of addressing and adding in flooding acknowledgement where it hasn't been before. Next slide. Thank you. These are found on page 3 and 4, and kind of the same thing. It's for special permits. This includes language that requiring that projects not divert flooding or runoff into adjoining properties, and gives the town the ability to include that condition against future and current flooding. Building aspects still have to abide by current existing code. This isn't forbidding anything, and you can't supersede it, but it's just some additional language that we're adding in. Just as a side reference, oftentimes with the Conservation Commission, one of our special conditions and orders and conditions is the project can't have runoff going into anyone's yard. So this is kind of an ongoing thing. And it's the language proposal is the same across all permitting proposals. Just again requires that you use the maps that we just referenced, and we can have those on file with the town clerk. Next slide. Thank you. Same thing. It adds review language for environmental design review, and this was, as an example, used also in Hull. Next slide. Thank you. Same thing, we're just adding additional language in that acknowledges the maps, the flooding, and the storm, 1% storm chance. Perfect. And same thing, requiring the use of the flood maps, we would have in writing somewhere that we would have those on file with the town clerk. And the design standards has the same language we proposed for the administrative review committee as well.
So the second goal was thinking about homeowners and property owners and giving them some opportunities to protect their property from flood damage. And elevating either homes or utilities within homes can significantly reduce property damage from flooding. It can also actually significantly reduce flood insurance premiums, which is, I think, for many becoming an increasingly difficult situation. Next slide. So this slide would allow existing buildings in the FEMA flood zone to exceed the zoning height limit in order to elevate for flood protection. Again, it's based on language that was adopted in Hull. We actually don't expect it to impact many properties because it's actually very expensive to elevate a home. But for a few homeowners or property owners for whom that might make a difference, it could be quite impactful, both in terms of protection and savings. What we found is that most homes in Winthrop and most places were built before we had flood maps, and so people build typically to the zoning height limit, which means now if there is no form of zoning relief, there's no way to protect your property. So this would address that. And again, it applies only to existing properties. We figure new construction can work within the known constraints. And then the second sort of allowance is also, I think, probably won't apply to many people, but it's when houses get flooded, typically loss of utilities is sort of the biggest damage and the biggest thing that can put people out of their homes for a long period of time. So this would create an opportunity for people to elevate utilities in the probably not very typical case where somebody really doesn't have space and they need to build a little bit of bump out on their home to accommodate utilities. This would give them the permission to do that. It also gives the building commissioner the authority to essentially decide whether that's needed or not. Next slide. And that takes us on to our final goal, which was sort of in some ways the other side of the coin, looking to address climate change from reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So encouraging and facilitating climate smart technologies, you know, with an eye to saving property owners money, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving quality of life. Next slide. I'd say these are primarily kind of housekeeping requirements. So adding language that allows solar panels, a minimal extension on roofs, again, a height issue for a solar panel. The rest of the slide was really just about adding definitions for clarification to the code. Next slide. There was one definition update we just wanted to give. There was an additional sentence in this definition that suggested that another definition was needed, and there's not. This is the definition for a solar roof. So we'll make that change. And next slide. There we go. And again, this is just sort of clarifying what can be done where and giving, making clear sort of the process for the different kinds of technologies people might want to adopt. The change that we referenced was here in conversation with the building commissioner. He recommended that all of the roof-mounted solar be done by right, but that all of the rest of the systems require special permit. And for some of those, we'd had by right language, but this was his recommendation, so that's a change that we're making. And I think that is, oh, I'm sorry, and then one more. This is again an example of requiring or allowing a small encroachment into a setback if need be for heat pump compressors. I did look into, in case anybody was interested, what 55 decibels was, and they said it's the sound of a refrigerator, a home refrigerator, so that's not too bad.
So we're definitely, open to edits, alterations in language, removal, or anything like that, and any changes. If there's any questions that either Ann or I can answer, we do, I think, possibly have somebody else from MAPC that may be helpful with some of the more technical questions if anything comes up. And if we can't answer it tonight, I can obviously get you the answer and get back to you with that information.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions on the council? Council Munson.
Can you go to the special permitting slide where the different types of, right there. So this is our current inspector's recommendations for special permits for different types of infrastructure in private homes.
In the various uses, so it includes
residential and institutional. So I'm just not following RA, RB, RC, RA, BA, what's all this?
So those are the
Residential
different
area,
zoning
residential.
areas, residential, business, commercial.
Okay, so
whatever.
then walk me down the next level, roof-mounted solar energy systems. So the Y means yes for all of them, and the rest is all special permit you need to get approved?
Exactly,
You don't need to get a roof-mounted solar energy system approved? You don't need this permit for that now?
Currently, it's all by right, and then where it's in red is the changes. So those were originally special permit, and after speaking with the building commissioner, he was okay with those being by right, because he said he didn't have anything, negative from them, but he felt that it would be best to, I believe, keep those other additions, those are new additions in the red, to keep those as special permit, at least for right now.
So the definition of by right, what is that?
You're allowed to add those on to your building, like if someone wanted to put solar panels on their house, you can do that. You still have to, I believe, have a building permit, but it doesn't need a special, ZBA, is that what? Yeah.
Would not go through any special
Yeah.
permitting process.
Okay. So, yeah, it's good to get ahead of this, because it's now become, I don't know where the electric vehicles are now, but it's gonna be pretty much pervasive in the next 20 years. So, I'm happy with this. I love that you guys have done a thorough job in looking ahead. I'm still confused as to who the point people are on making some of this stuff happen, and who's our climate czar, if you will. I'm looking for a climate czar. Is that you, Tony?
Right now, it's me until we get somebody else, yeah.
Just another hat.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't Ipswich, so it'll be here as well, so it's fine.
Happy with all of the above. Thank you. Great job.
Councilor Aiello.
Couple of questions. Can you further define electric vehicle infrastructure? Most people I know that have electric vehicles simply extend the cord out from the next outside outlet. What's
This was the one area where we do have somebody on the line, if, it's.
Yep. Oh, I can jump in a little bit. I mean, a lot of that electric structure infrastructure is the charging stations that you would put up. A lot of people will put them, if they're attached to the house, that's not gonna, really need a residential permit. It'd just be an electrical charge. But however, what would, if you wanted to put like a separate charging station, maybe out in your yard, or for the town and the residential, the business, we put it out in a parking lot. Some of the new fast chargers that are coming out require additional transformer technology, because they charge in 30 minutes, so that would require potentially setbacks, easements, so that's why the special permit comes into
But
effect.
the typical residential, plug it in.
Yeah, somebody who orders a Tesla charger and they put in their garage, no, you don't need a special permit for that, yeah.
Okay.
And we do have, on pages 1 and 2 of the pack with the zoning language, we have new definitions, so this is something we'd want to add in for electric vehicle battery, vehicle plug-in hybrid, and vehicle charging station, as well as electric vehicle infrastructure, and there's a couple more, so we do have the defining definitions for those types of items.
And then a couple of things not necessarily related to the zoning view of life and this stuff, but you have a tie-in to particular forecast for sea level rise with maps dated here. What we've seen over the last decade is every 2 years is a new forecast and they change. So does the town need to stay up to date as the state's mapping change happens, that our standards will happen as well? And should the language reflect that to be an automatic? So new issue of a series of maps that reflect to Winthrop, and automatically we adopt that new standard, as opposed to sort of forgetting about it and we're dealing with something 10 years old, 10 years from now.
It's a good question. I think we may not yet be in a position to make that automatic. With the 2.4 feet, this sort of, it does reflect the most recent sort of projections we think of, that takes us around 270, 280. The analysis that was done was also done for 4.2 feet. So, but I think you're quite a ways out from needing to make a change.
No, I'm not arguing about what's being said today, but just if something comes out 5 years from now, would you have language that says if the Commonwealth issues a new forecast for 2070, if that's the planning year, we would automatically have adopted that, as opposed to going through this all over again. You don't have to answer it today, just think about it.
Thank you for that. I think
the other two questions, there's also an element of stormwater runoff because of changing rainfall patterns. Does that affect anything here that we should be thinking about. And then the third is between increased rainfall patterns and the sea level rise and storm surge stuff. Have we thought about public space and maintenance and expansion of public space to act as basically places for the water to go to protect the residential and commercial districts? So again, you don't have to answer them today, it's late, but I would enjoy a discussion downstream this year.
I'll say just in short, those are all critical issues that will need to be addressed. This project really focused on making sure that we don't exceed sea level rise.
Yeah, okay.
There are EPA requirements through our MS permit, whatever the number is, MS-31 permit, that DEP requires an EPA. Steve Galler is not here now, he's very aware of that, and the requirements that we have to hit for that, otherwise we risk fines and things like that. So we're actively involved with that and stormwater upgrades we have to do.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Before they go, Council President,
Yes.
if I may, Town Clerk reminded us that we've got the 48-hour requirement, so we really won't make the
Okay.
Thursday meeting to change the agenda.
Okay.
So would it be okay if we voted this on July 19th?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so I just wanted to point that out. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, CBD crosswalks, we had briefly started discussing this at 1 or 2 meetings ago. I'm not 100% sure if it was the last meeting or not, but we need to kind of make a decision. We had some information, and I think the town manager had this process done in Ipswich.
We did.
It's, the process has been relayed a little differently. I mean, the costs are the same. So right now, in the CBD, as it's being finished up, there are 19, could be 18, but I believe 19 crosswalks, from the top of the streets to the bottom of the streets to the cross streets and whatever. We have planned, from our streetscape designer, architect, to use this surfacing technique where they would mill out the crosswalk section from curb to curb, and it would be down about 1.5 inches. And this would be almost like a liquid pavement, colored pavement, that they would pour into that section, the crosswalk section. As it's setting, they would stamp it, so it would have a nice visibility, a nice look. It does come at a cost, and the current cost on these 19 crosswalks is roughly $130,000. And they last for anywhere from 5 to 10 years. They're relatively new, so they don't really have a defined time. I'm sure weather has an impact, salt and everything else has an impact, but and when they're replaced, it's the same technique. You have to mill them out, you have to put them back in. It's the same cost plus whatever increase would be over that period of time. The way I look at it, we have 3 solutions here. One is to go by what we had originally said, spend $138,000, understand that we're gonna have to start, that's another maintenance cost that we should put in as we're maintaining these assets. The second is to go to regular painted crosswalks as we have throughout the town. The third, and anybody could adjust these, but the third, I would say, would be to maintain a normal painted crosswalks throughout the outskirts of the project. And in the center proper, anything touching French Square, we could do the little enhancements with this surface. That would be 9 crosswalks. And it would also include, there's the train tracks that are in the street at Hagman Road Extension. So we could, including that and the crosswalks that are exactly in French Square, I think it would be 9. So that would cut the cost basically in half. We would still have to maintain them. We would still have to look at replacing them over a 5 to 10 year period. So I would like to, if we can't, we could hold it over. I would like to see if we could vote on this tonight, but I would like to get input from the councilors on their thoughts. Councilor Belcher.
Thank you. Based on the maintenance cost and the capabilities of the DPW, I think that we should go with the painted crosswalks throughout the CBD. I know the stamped pavement looks nice, but they put one in on Euro Beach 3 years ago maybe. It got a little messed up. They patched it with just regular asphalt and it looked really bad. So I think that we're asking for something that looks nice for a little bit to turn into something that looks not very nice quickly.
Okay, Councilor Munson, Councilor, we'll start from the end. Councilor Honan.
I completely agree with Councilor Belcher. I think that painted will be fine. I think nobody will think of the difference. Nobody will notice the difference. We'll just be paying a lot more for it. And I just think to go with something cheaper at this point where we spent so much money, to add a little flourish is just not worth the money.
I'll go down. Did you have something, Councilor?
Just echoing the comments, same thing.
Councilor Munson.
My only hesitation about going forward with just painted and saving money is that isn't it true that we've come to the conclusion that painted crosswalks when wet are slippery?
I think we were asked by John at a previous meeting, and we were told that that is what type of paint, I'm sorry? Thermoplastic paint, which we do not use.
Different paint than this, it's a different
Yeah.
process now.
And it's a different process than what we use as a town.
Okay. So we're not increasing any liability by doing the painted?
No, that's what we have on 99% of the crosswalks now.
So and to Joe Aiello's point, Councilor Aiello's point a while back, does it really diminish the look and feel? I mean, if we've gone this far, and that was our projected plan to make a nice, a higher end feel to the CBD, do we want to regress now back to save the last dollar, while we could have that upscale look? I'm just throwing that out there to kind of, honor that point. I'm not sure if we're really getting an upscale look, that's the one.
No, I think you are getting a little bit of an upscale look. I think the thought is that, I think it's an awful lot of money for crosswalks personally, but I think the thought is, especially closer to the center or at minimal where the tire tracks are, because if you look at the rail on Hagman Road, they kind of blend into the black pavement.
Right.
This would have a little bit of a distinguishing feature, but, I've made a commitment, as this council has, as we're doing these projects and spending, millions of dollars, we need to remember that we're gonna have to maintain them, and we need to do that in a way that we feel comfortable that we can do that. So I totally understand Councilor Belcher's point. I guess you have to. I hate to just look at anything just solely based on cost, but it's a lot of money. But I'll continue to go around and get Councilor DeMarco.
I'd vote for the hybrid plan personally. I mean, we put a lot of work into the center. We always have been talking about having a great looking center. We want to save money. I would not do the full plan. My top preference would be the hybrid, but I'd go all paint as well if we feel we can't afford that.
Councilor Aiello.
Let me repeat my comments from last time. The first was that this topic was presented to us as a mechanism to offset some increased costs on the budget, which means that there have been claims and change orders filed, and I asked for a copy of the claims and change orders so we could see what has caused that ballooning of cost, so we can better understand what's causing this problem. I have not received it. The council has not received that information to this date. I think that we should be entitled to that. Number two, I asked for a life cycle analysis of, let's look at a 10-year span, if this is a 10-year product, what it takes to cost to maintain them. Because don't forget, a normal crosswalk, if you look at the crosswalks around town, we get at them every number of years. There's a lot of times when crosswalks have faded. In heavily trafficked areas, which is what the center is, they're probably gonna have to be repainted every year. So that's an operating cost that's happening every year over 10 years. I'd just like to see the math on that problem presented to us fair and square on a piece of paper so we can see. And then the third item is what Rob just described. I was only tangentially involved in some of this stuff a number of years back, but I know that the Citizens Economic Development and Center Revitalization Committee, I think that was its name, and the urban designer and the town manager at the time, DPW director, spent a lot of time thinking about the aesthetic of that and to have the center be a very special place, and I worry about detracting from that as well. So those are my comments.
Councilor Flockhart.
All right, my concern is for the disabled, and it would seem that these milled crosswalks would be more, that they would be more sensitive to them, that they would be able to feel where the crosswalk was and stay in it. But since we have a member of the Disabilities Commission here, perhaps we could just get
Absolutely.
some input from John. John, could you give us your opinion?
I'm not from the Disabilities Committee.
Oh, you're not on that anymore?
No, I'm not. I'm on the Diversity Committee, but I'd be happy to say that I have never come across one of these stamped crosswalks, so I can't give you an opinion. On the thermoplastic, I can. I would suggest that that you have two white lines, one on each side, and a sign saying that it's a crosswalk. That's all you need. Until I come across one of these stamped crosswalks, then I will be able to give you an opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I do want to address Councilor Aiello's, because I would like to see the overage too. I know that there was ample work done on Putnam Place, two big items done on Putnam Place. There was also some work done, example, I think they added an additional hydrant at the end of Woodside near Savisi's. I think there were a couple other culverts that they added coming down the hills, maybe. I know one on Woodside, and I'm not sure if one on Bartlett. It was roughly a $13.4 million project. I think it went over budget, roughly 180 to 190, but I don't have those numbers either. But from what I've dug up, that's what I found, which is 1%, which isn't terrible, but it's over, right? And we should see whether. But I know there are specific areas that were increased, and there was some that was done. For example, I'm sure people saw throughout the center after they poured all the sidewalks, they were back like 2 weeks later, ripping ripping a percentage of them up and replacing them. That is not a cost borne by the town or the project, but there is a state inspector that goes around, and if they feel that that sidewalk is not up to standard, they would force the contractor to do it. Some of it is just graffiti and such like that, so they did replace a lot of those sidewalks, but that is not an add-on. But there were significant add-ons on Putnam, and some smaller add-ons, and I believe the extension, the Hagman extension, had some work done also in the parking area behind some of the restaurants. And I'm sure there were a couple more too, and we should find out what those are. So this does, I mean, obviously, like we just talked about money, it's always a discussion. I'm more concerned with the maintenance of anything we're doing now, and I think a lot of things that have been done in the past really didn't have that emphasis on maintaining. Not that anybody wanted to not maintain them, but it wasn't discussed a lot. It didn't have a lot of emphasis. It wasn't discussed when we were doing projects and such. And I think now you'll notice, even when Director Callow was here about TIPS project or whatever, we're always asking questions about, okay, that's great. How are we gonna maintain it? Where's the money coming from? So I understand both, and I just put out 3 options. We could do whatever we want. It would be nice to see some enhancements in French Square, but I could totally understand what John said and what most of the others said with going with a crosswalk. There is a cost, like Councilor Aiello said, and I know that, especially around school districts, they do them every year, every beginning of every school year, pretty much, and they're a little different than everybody else, where they're painted blue and white. I think most other crosswalks get a regular maintenance of that. That's done in-house, I believe. But I would be open to a motion by any counselor.
Can I just make another?
You can make a point, you can make a whole point.
I can make a whole point, thank you. If we were able to do the stamped concrete around the narrow gauge tracks, and
It's
then.
not concrete, it's stamp pavement, yep.
Sorry. If we could do that and just paint the crosswalks, that would be my idea, because you really can't see them, and I think they're really cool, and we should protect them and make them noticeable. So that would be
And
my-
the only thing on that I would ask is, I don't know if
that's
they would do one thing. And I would just have to ask for that, but,
Just one crosswalk, you said?
well, she's
Around
talking
the
about
train
where the train tracks are on
Oh, okay, yeah, yep,
Agman.
yeah.
If it would be worth somebody to come out to just do that one thing or not.
Just on that one side.
So I mean, we could make someone.
I'll make a motion for the hybrid.
So, and I'll try to ad-lib a motion. So you're making a motion that we do the 9,
Yes,
8 or 9 crosswalks, including the train
in the center.
in the center.
And the
tracks.
outliers.
And the outliners, so going from corner to corner. And the remaining 8 or so would remain just painted.
Yep.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second by Councilor Aiello. Any further discussion? All right, last for a roll call vote.
Council Honan.
What exactly are we voting on here?
9 of the stamped.
We're voting for a hybrid, so we're voting.
Hybrid, okay.
Yeah, 9 of the stamped and then the rest painted.
No.
Council Fusillo.
No.
Council Munson.
Yes.
Council Belcher.
No.
Council DeMarco.
Yes.
Council Flockhart.
Yes.
Council Aiello.
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero. President Lettieri.
Yes.
Yes, has it.
All right. Under actually, when our current town manager was interviewing here, he brought up a great point. We talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we talked about committees in his town of Ipswich, and he noted that in Ipswich, there are several department heads that are included on the committee as liaisons and to bring further information and more information. And we all thought that was a great idea and did mention it and seemed to all be along with it. So I am making a motion here tonight that we appoint the town manager or designee, fire chief or designee, and police chief or designee as members, non-voting members on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So I would ask if somebody would make that motion. Motion by Councilor Fusillo, second by Councilor Aiello. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Belcher.
I think the superintendent was another one that we.
Superintendent was one that we discussed actually earlier tonight that we would like to add, but we haven't talked with the superintendent and feel that we owe the respect to ask her to make sure, and it would be the superintendent or her designee, and the plan is to make that appointment at a subsequent meeting. We just felt it was in, to talk to her about it before.
So,
Councilor Conan.
this wouldn't necessarily be police chief, fire chief, it could be just a member
It
of the
could be a
force.
designee, I mean, the hope would be that it would be fire chief, police chief. If you wanted to amend the motion to make it specific, that would be fine. I mean,
No,
we could do
I just was wondering if it could be a member of the police department, a member of the fire department. I'd rather keep it open,
Well, that's why we said or designate.
Got it.
I mean, I think the chiefs have should be deservingly of that position, but they can pass it on if they don't feel that they could, if they didn't have the time with it. Councilor Munson.
So as the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, have they been appointed to come up with a flag policy?
No.
No. So have they been assigned any?
I think, personally, I think we should include them in that, but that, we have the ability to do that in-house.
Okay.
But
So
we
this-
should include them in.
Yeah, without, so it seems like this is a precursor to giving them assignments.
Yes, I mean, my goal is to have, it's crazy to have committees, and we have had many of them in the past that just don't forget a lot of action. And
Right.
it's, people are volunteering their time and effort, and, one has been for years and years, unfortunately, and Council Belcher was on it, has been the Airport Hazards Committee, which, again, I got an opinion if we could disband the committee and create a new committee with a purpose, with a real meaningful purpose. So, to have a committee just to have it is kind of useless.
No, I support having the people, designees of the departments too, especially if we can give them real assignments and real purpose.
Any other further discussion? There's a motion, there's a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Town council asked the town manager to declare real property located at the rear of 413, 415 Shirley Street available for disposition. We've talked about 3 properties over the last couple of months, I believe. 2 on Fawn Bar, and I think, and Councilor Aiello had, I'm not singling out, but Councilor Aiello, among others, maybe had questions, I think maybe Councilor DeMarco too, on getting more specifics in terms of area around,
This is stuff on the
if
back
we
of it.
need any access, correct. So, we're still awaiting questions on that. This property seems more clear-cut, and, it's not our position to sell it or not to sell it. Our job is to give the approval to the town manager to move forward with a potential sale of that small piece of property. But I also, we've had requests from Fawn Bar, and I think we have an obligation to get that in a timely manner too. But we just need a little bit more information on it. And I think that was even before Tony started, so. But do I see a motion to give the town manager direction on Shirley Street? I have a motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor Fusillo. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Just an update more on the trash enterprise. I want to keep this on old business so we do not forget it. I will, and I should have mentioned it in correspondence. I did get a correspondence today from, I forget the name, but it was somebody who came before us who had received a letter from the town on June 30th. I believe, and I tried to call back and they didn't answer. But I know we said this at the last meeting, that we have extended that till September 1st, and with the hope of having a policy in place before then. So if they're listening, we have extended that to September 1st for now, giving us more time to get a better grasp on that and to get a policy done. So that's that. New business, council approve precincts 3 and 6 polling, moving from senior center to the middle school gym for the September 6, 2022 and November 11, 2022 elections. This would also include, assuming, that precincts 1 and 2 would remain in the middle school, and precinct 4 would stay at Golden Drive. What this does, and I've asked for this for a long time now, but what it does, we can't make this in perpetuity because hopefully something's gonna be done with that middle school site and we won't be able to use that. But for now, it gives the schools the ability to not have to close school for another day and have school off. Even though they use it for professional development and such, it's just a cleaner way to go. The space is there. We had no issues this year. This is not moving forward. This is just for the 2 elections that we're going to have this year. So that's new business, does not have to be voted on tonight. Any councilor can use an objection. If somebody wants to make a motion, that's fine. If not, we'll hold it over to the next meeting. There is some sort of time restrictions in terms of notifications.
To make a motion to move it on today.
You could make a motion today to keep precinct 4 the easiest way to do it is to keep precinct 4 where it is at Golden Drive, and to move precincts 1, 2, 3, and 5 and 6 to the middle school.
Motion.
There's a motion by Councilor Munson, there's a second by, and this is for 2022 elections only right now.
Just,
There's a motion by Councilor Munson, there's a second by Councilor Aiello. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, just an edit. We should, just for clarification, we should probably put old middle school gym in there instead of in our, okay. Yeah.
Councilor Flockhart.
That's an awful lot of polling places.
It is, we
over
did
there.
ask the council clerk, and the council clerk went down there and feels that it's definitely adequate. We're really only adding 2. We have 1, 2, and 5 down there, and it's pretty barren.
It's pretty sparse.
Not when it's.
And it's not a major
Not
election,
during
right?
the
I mean,
election. Yeah, well,
not
that's
that
true.
every election is major, but it's not. Right.
Election day's November 8th,
Yes.
not the 11th.
Oh, it isn't, yeah, it's November 8th.
Second edit.
Donna always
There's a motion, there's a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, the ayes have it. Discussion on public ways, and this was on the Court Road area. I wanted to put this on specifically. I had mentioned it about a month back, and I know that there's a lot going on, but there are significant issues that, due to funding or whatever, that we're just not able to maintain these public accesses, and I think they need to be maintained, and we have to take a look at them, and I'm sure there's many more throughout the town that need to be addressed. So I just want to, it's actually under new business, but I want to keep this on the agenda, and it's been an awful long meeting, and I know that Director Caller has left, so I would be more than happy to just move this to the next agenda under old business. But I think public ways and it's funny because it says not private, but private ways are another discussion that we're going to have in the near future.
Jim,
Yeah, Councilor Ayala.
No, happy to move it to a future thing, but I think it would be helpful to have good mapping.
Yes.
And to also describe sort of all the elements we're talking about. I can tell you from personal experience, I use them all the time. If you know where they are, they're
Yeah.
great shortcuts.
No, there's a lot that,
And
there's
they
no
keep
signage
getting
people
narrower
don't
and
know.
narrower because people keep building fences
Yes.
over narrow and narrow.
Overgrown.
And some of the access points to the ocean have disappeared over the years, and so it's an important discussion. I think will probably take a number of meetings to sort of get it right, but
But we should know what we're talking
we should
about and
know
have
what
some
we own and
visuals
what
that we
we've
can see.
got, and try to figure out
Dave
how to do
Hubbard
that.
can help you.
All right,
He did an article.
we will keep that, and that will be on old business at the next meeting. The other thing, and again, just to throw out, this might even be more school-related, but we have an abundance of old technology in the old middle school, in the basements of some of the schools. I'm not sure in the basement of Town Hall or not, but I don't know if there's a way we could donate if anybody wants it, or if we could sell it, I'm not sure, but if we could just ask the town manager to look into that. There's just an awful lot of old technology, whether it be laptops, Chromebooks, televisions, rabbit ears, whatever that happens to be.
The whole procurement section on surplus equipment.
I'm sorry, Council Hona?
There are many recycle programs, as you know, like,
Yep.
that you can get rid
That
of.
will take the technology and.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of towns have electronic day and, electronic, equipment day. They take computer monitors, computers, hard drives, things like that, so, yeah.
Thank you all for waiting for 2 hours, but second round of public comment. Donna, we haven't heard from you in 2 hours.
Precinct 5, I hope to be quick.
We all know that, Donna.
5 days
So do we.
ago, I sent an email to the planning board, to the town council manager, and welcome to our town,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Marino. And I just give you copies of what I did, and what I'm here to discuss tonight is 5 Fremont Street, the development over there. And it seems like deja vu, I've been there, done that, and I think that was kind of one of the last times I was in this room. But I would like to read publicly what I said, and kind of hone in on the key issues here, which is, under what circumstances was the permit granted by right, and we're talking about a structure that's more than 10,000 square feet and has not gone before the planning board. And there is a big question, I guess the person who bought the land or the area to be built was referring to an old center business district map, because they pursued that property prior to our change on October 15 of 2019, when there was in fact a center business district map designed. And this particular thing gives a background on that, and I think background is very important here in history, because you know, we're gonna be cursed to repeat our errors if we don't address this. And I worry that a dangerous precedent might be being set with violation particularly of the new Center Business District map, which clearly puts some questionable properties that total 12, including my house and 3 others. I had crayon drawn around it some years ago by prospective planners. We, you know, I just think just by reading the thing, it would be really quick. I'm one of those people, you know, had the crayon drawn around her house. And no personal mailed notices. I'm talking about the building on Somerset Avenue, which is almost to completion. And we're talking about, let's see, October 17 to roughly May of 20. So a good 2.5 years of our time, energy, and effort were put into some formal clarification of who's in and who's out of the Center Business District. No personal mail notices as far as the public hearings on the matter when the zoning changed. But that's a dead issue now, but public notices did appear in the Winthrop Sun transcript regarding the change in zoning, which raises the height of any buildings in the center to a maximum of 4 feet, except if they abut a residential property, then they have to allow for just 2.5 stories high. My husband, Tom Riley, and neighbors Dan and Jean Coughlin. Jean couldn't be here tonight, she had a class. Nick Siotis, Anna Bakos, and Christine Bakos were a few members of our Winthrop Neighborhood Association who filed a petition on May 27/18 regarding issues of the proposed building height, density, setback, and parking. The petition required to be reviewed in 90 days by the town charter was indefinitely postponed on January 15 of 19, and it was never alluded to again. Adding insult to injury, the appeals board on June 27 of 19 declared our next door neighbor's home at 20 Cottage Park Road mixed use, using an inaccurate map and a PowerPoint presentation provided by the then proposed developer Envelo. By calling my neighbor's home mixed use, the developer could avoid having to build up only 2.5 stories next to that residential property. And it's a duplication of my house, DeFlume rebuilt in '51. The neighborhood association then sued the town. After a while, an agreement was reached by Envelo and the neighborhood association. The building is now 2 stories next to my neighbor at 20 Cottage Park Road, and the rest is a kind of Lego type structure that falls into the new 4-story CBD zoning ordinance of 2014. Fortunately, with the leadership of then Councilor Boncory, the town council met jointly with the planning board on 10/1/19 to decide which homes were in and which were out of the CBD. Councilor Boncory said publicly, when we changed the zoning for the CBD in 2014, we never meant for people's homes to be included. So former Councilor President Philip Boncory was then chair of the Rules and Ordinances Committee. And I attended all of these meetings, so I remember them vividly. That particular Rules and Ordinances Committee met on 10/8 to entertain resident and neighbor input. Finally, on October 15 of 19, the town council presented and voted positively on the new CBD map, which eliminated about 12 residences, homes, from being put into the CBD, Center Business District, and permitted 1 structure on Madison Street to be labeled as business, which was very appropriate, and the owner wanted it too. Note, we're talking about 4 of our homes here at the end of Cottage Park Road, 2 on Bartlett Road, Fremont Street, and especially 15 Fremont Street, the home of Mrs. Frances Cross. Perhaps 3 homes on Burl Terrace and 1 or 2 homes on Winthrop Street. These properties are, in my recollection, all out of the Center Business District. Needless to say, and I know I'm looking at the council and it has changed quite a bit, but I know, President Lettieri, you were an integral part of that, and, also I feel aligned with Councilor Boncory's statement that you had no intention, of putting people's homes in the Center Business District, and I can attest to that, your council president was with that, in, with the objective of respecting people's homes. Needless to say, many of us felt after a 2.5-year struggle to do the right thing, development-wise in the CBD, extremely grateful when we were extremely grateful when an official Center Business District map was officially sanctioned at the 10/15/19 meeting of the Winthrop Town Council. Finally, owners felt safe from misguided development, and prospective developers would rightfully know just where they could develop and where they could build. Given this above history, this is why I was extremely disheartened to learn that a lot of people's hard work had gone down the drain when I learned that builders at 5 Fremont were now considering Mrs. Cross's home in the CBD and therefore abandoned any legal consideration of her home as a residence. Note that the CBD map is part of the town's website. It is clearly drawn. It pains me to think that permits have been issued in error with no consideration of the newly defined CBD properties. And I understand that the owner might have crossed papers or something earlier prior to the development of this map in 2019. But I feel that's an issue that the council has to address, and or its attorneys. What happens to somebody who thought they were going to build in 2006 and then come, or is it just that, hey, there's new regs, these are the regs, and the building inspector has to describe these regs and explain them to the prospective developer, and hopefully they abide. But my personal interest in this matter is my friend, Mrs. Frances Cross of 15 Fremont Street. She'll be 86 this year. Her husband just passed away from a long illness last month, and her son died from COVID in 2021. She really doesn't need this grief to think that the town is sanctioning construction around her home that violates the sanctity of her residence as a home. Why do all residents and officials work so hard to legally define a CBD area and map if all we expect is violation of that same map? These are people's homes and lives we're affecting. Why was this permit granted considering Mrs. Cross's home as in the CBD and therefore not protected by the October 19 Center Business District map definition and homeowners' residence rights? I think we all agree that this kind of permit granting sets a dangerous precedent, and that's mainly why I'm here tonight. A dangerous precedent for our town. I would trust that the council will rule positively in this important matter and uphold CBD map definitions. And if there is question about when someone did initiate, if it was prior to that map, then that's something that has to be discerned and run by attorneys or something here. But we've got now a resident, Mrs. Cross, who looks at one of her walls, and 3 of the windows are looking at the wall of the adjoining building that is going up quite quickly and under the old rules. They are building as if she's in the Center Business District. So there's no respect for that 2.5-story height and other implications that might involve density, setback, and parking. I thank you so much for your hearing me and listening to me tonight, and I trust that proper zoning and permitting will help in this and future development. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for your
Donna.
time.
And I will say, I know the whole council very much cares for Mrs. Cross and feels terribly about the loss of her husband, and we send our condolences for that, because, they've been a great, beautiful couple for a long, long time, and have been in that neighborhood for an extremely long time. We as a council can't get involved right away with the day-to-day business that's going on in the town, but this is not like brand new news. It seems to have been around. I'm now hearing a lot more about it.
Maybe some of the family members could,
No,
they'd
but
like to speak too.
we would like to instruct the town manager too, to get us a more legal definition and update as to, where we stand. I've heard, some of your concerns too with, is this pre-CBD, is it post-CBD, is it this, that, and the other thing? And we would, I know, I could pretty much speak for the whole council, that we would like to get a clearer definition on that and see what our right and obligation and options are.
Because unless it's like, okay, there's new rules in town, and you gotta change,
Nope.
you gotta change things,
Understand. Thank you,
And they
Donna.
were changed for a good reason, really.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak if you don't mind, and I actually would like to start, I don't know if any of you have taken the time or been on Fremont Street and seen the monstrosity that they're building.
Could you
Pam Cross Hinckley, and I'm representing 15 Fremont Street, which was my home and my parents' home. You can pass them around. It's just some side views, those were just taken today. That doesn't do it justice at all for what's being done. I would challenge just a little bit about, you really need to understand whether or not there is a ruling on the dates. It is clear for somebody who is not educated in property law, you only have to look at the document, see the dates, and this is a clear violation of, anyways, I have a lot to say about it, but I'm gonna be under 3 minutes. For the record, my name is Pam Hinckley, and I am representing my parents' home located at 15 Fremont Street. I spent the first 25 years of my life in this home. My parents have lived there for 64 years. This is our family's home. As you are all well aware, my parents' home abuts the new construction at 5 Fremont Street. The structure is 14 inches from the north side of their living room. And actually today, with the second floor going on, and we all just were there, it is technically 1 inch. The second floor is now jetted out into over their yard. I can't encourage you enough as a council to please go. Feel free to go into the yard. I will let my mother know that you're coming. When you see it, you will be outraged. This is overpowering their house completely. Before I make a request of this board, I think it's important I share with you some of the background information about my family. We have spent the past 3 years providing in-home care for my father, John Cross, who passed away 3 weeks ago. The reason I share this is to shed some light on how could this possibly have gotten to this point without us being involved. The other factor that devastated our family was that my brother Teddy Cross passed away suddenly on April 29th, 2020. Teddy was a local contractor in town and had stayed abreast of this situation. Before his death, Teddy reassured us all that my parents' house was in the clear and of being in the CBD, and if there was a building to be constructed, it would be 10 feet from their home. I don't stand here debating the fact that a building could be constructed on the property. The owner certainly is well within his rights. What I do question is how the town could allow a building of this size and location to happen, and even now that all these questions are being asked, there is nothing being done, and they're continuing to build. They're actually working longer days to get the building up because that's just one more thing in their power that you're not going to be able to stop them. I attended the planning board meeting on June 13th and heard loud and clear that the owner did not comply with the town's building requirements and/or procedures. In fact, he never got approval from the planning board. Instead, circumventing the board and receiving his building permit by the building commissioner and building inspector, and I quote, "The building commissioner and building inspector determined that the project as proposed may be constructed as a matter of right. Therefore, the Site Plan Review Committee endorses the project and finds that if the project is built in accordance with the plans, requires no relief from the Board of Appeals." What does this even mean? A matter of right. So let's skip all the discussions, public hearings, and approvals needed to construct a 25,000 square foot, 3-story building abutting a residential home 14 inches away because we think it's okay. And let's not go to the planning board and get their educated opinion. And finally, let's ignore that the CBD zoning has finally been defined and use a map from 2006, which conveniently may include 15 Fremont Street in that zoning. An address which sits in Winthrop Center, Metcalf Square, Historic District, no less. I do not believe that this was an honest mistake, yet a very well calculated approval process, which has been done more than once in this town from what people have been shared with me. The owner of 5 Fremont Street used the same attorney that represented the builder of the center project and was actively involved in the lawsuit regarding the center construction that Donna so courageously led, fought, and won, helping preserve the innocent homeowners on Cottage Park Road and other homes around the CBD, including 15 Fremont Street. So let's not pretend that he didn't know about the new maps and the new zoning requirements. This is very personal for me, my family, and my 86-year-old mother, who now lives in a house where the north side is completely in darkness. All of her windows will be blocked by this monstrosity. And literally, this far away, darkness. Her house looks different as of today, and it's only the wood that's up. It's not even done. Her privacy will never be the same because the apartments look into her home, including her bedroom. Just as important, though, this is about right and wrong, and this is wrong. And you as a town council are being asked to correct the mistakes that have been made. It has come to my attention that this board has received a letter from the planning board asking for a review. We'd like to know, when are you going to meet regarding this issue? We are also requesting that 15 Fremont Street be put on the next town council agenda and every agenda moving forward until this issue's been resolved. I would like to ask the council tonight to put a cease and desist on this building effective immediately. I did make copies because I would like to officially submit. And I don't know if anybody wants a copy, but I'm happy to give it to you if you'd like. There's a couple of pictures of just the map and the historical records.
My mother wasn't able to be here, but she asked that I give the town manager. Okay.
Thank you.
And she also wanted to make sure that the copy. Thank you.
Well done.
Did you want to take the photos back?
Those are her comments.
Yep.
No,
No
oh,
worries.
you can help
Yeah.
make it. Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
And I would ask that this be put on the agenda, Denise, in case we don't. And ask the town manager again to just please look into this
Yeah.
and give us an update as soon as possible on this, Council.
Yeah, I've already sent the building commissioner an email following up with me in the morning, but I just want to say for the record, the council doesn't have the authority to put a.
No, I
cease and
understand
desist,
that
yeah.
for that, but I
just
do
wanna be
want
clear
to
about that, yeah.
see what we do have the ability to do
Right, no,
and
absolutely.
and to not wait much.
And how do I find out what this council or what anybody's doing, how do I find that out?
Denise, if we get contact information for Pam and
It's on
we'll make sure
my
we,
email, but I'll gladly give you my phone
Sure.
number
yeah,
myself.
and we'll include her on any correspondence we have. Council Ayala.
Is it possible to request that the town manager investigate the ability to do a cease and desist and a status on your ability to execute that?
Yep. Well, I mean, yeah,
I think
I mean,
that
certainly,
has
yeah.
the most.
It falls under the building commissioner, but
urgent
obviously the building
matter.
commissioner works
Yeah.
with the town manager, so.
Does the building commissioner have authority to issue a cease and desist?
Absolutely.
I don't know if the council knows the answer to this question, but what does it mean by a matter of right? So if the building commissioner and the building inspector said that it was a matter of right, I've looked it up, I've Googled it, what does that mean, a matter of right?
Town manager.
I can answer that. Matter of right means if they determined that it fell within the existing zoning bylaws.
Okay.
So what they determined, whether right or wrong, I'm not gonna talk about that now, because I gotta look into it, but
Yep.
I think what he said was, is that, he felt that it fell under the old map, the old CBD map, so that's why he issued it. And it felt like it was either applied for or was in process before the maps went into effect. I think that was, he did speak to me briefly about that.
What constitutes, if you do know this answer, what constitutes that it's official? right? Is it when you submit your plans or when you talk about it? Because I can talk about anything right now and then I can do it in 15 years, right? I mean, what is the official ruling on something like that?
I don't wanna answer, cause I know our town council
Yeah.
weighed in on that, so I'll get you the answer, but I wanna,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
normally there needs to be either an application and or a building permit issue, but I wanna see what council said,
Well, the
you know.
building permit wasn't issued until 2021.
That I knew, right, yeah, okay.
Long after.
Yep.
Excuse me, real quick, because I'm going to be late, and I thank you all for entertaining this, I really do. And I think you were the only counselor who was on that old committee, so it was kind of important to give a history here. But could I ask Mrs. Hinckley, you know, you said your brother Ted oversaw what was going on, and then there was this gap. But what happened in the interim, you know, like, well, who followed up? Nobody followed up from the family. What were the circumstances under which you were
So
operating?
we were caring for my father, and I will say, you know, he was bedridden, we had hospice, you know, it was all consuming. And actually, I was pretty much in charge with my two sisters. My mother's not capable of this. It was an all-consuming task to keep him at home and have him pass at home. That was our goal. So there was no construction going on. And the very first time we ever heard about it was truly, a man was chopping down trees in my mother's yard because they were hanging over the property. And I went outside and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, we're gonna start construction." So then Chris Young came over and explained to me that it wasn't, you know, it all sounded so nice, you know, when he said, "Oh, we're gladly gonna take down your trees for you and we'll clean up, you know, this, yada, yada, yada." And it wasn't until they brought this gigantic backhoe, and I didn't even wanna go into this, but I will for the spirit of sharing. And they started digging up the old foundation from a building that had been there long ago. That involved all of my mother's foundation falling out from underneath her house. I truly thought, and I do have pictures in my folder, that the house was gonna tip over. I made a call to Chris Young the following day. He sent somebody over, they packed it in again. It happened again, all the dirt fell over, because I'm not talking a little bit of banging, I am talking the house shook as if there was small explosions going on. And the whole time, my dad's lying in a bed 6 feet from where they're doing this. It was just horrendous. This has not been, you know, oh, this building is invading our privacy. They have invaded our whole house. They've taken over, and still to this day, there are construction workers on steel, putting on steel beams as close as this when I'm standing in my mother's dining room. They're looking down into our dining room. There's just no way that this should have ever happened. I think the goal for them is that we quietly go away, sell them the house, and the problem is solved, right? So the mistake is done. It's just absolutely insulting. It's a disgrace that this has happened.
And sets a dangerous precedent.
Sure does.
That's why I came up
People
with
get
the
to do
term.
whatever they want. Yep.
Thank you. And you're gonna
Yep,
take care of that?
I'm
right?
on it, yep. I apologize, so I'll make sure we get the answers for you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll be around.
Thank you.
Public, still in public comment. Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, just want to make one comment. The ceremony for David Green is the 1-year anniversary Sunday. That's why it's on that day. Sad anniversary.
That's right.
Public comment, Lisa.
Sorry.
Lisa,
Thanks for staying around so long, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
I'll try to be quick. I wasn't even gonna comment on that, but I mean, this is what I have to say, that, there have been a number of occasions of building permits being issued in error. And so I think it'd be great to, learn more about that and check it out. That's not common. So I think that would be terrific. Just a couple of really quick things, and then just maybe going backwards on my list. The tree planting, I think it's great. It's a really sad anniversary, again, related to all the comments we made earlier, not having acknowledged that Juneteenth holiday kind of makes it even harder, I think. I have to say, I was looking at I don't know what the program will be, but there was a list and something that went around email of like 8 people public officials, town council, everyone. It would be nice if it were, like if there were a neighbor or a community person who knew David and Ramona who could speak or something. I mean, no one knows I'm even making a suggestion, but I looked at this and said, oh, let's not have it turn into like every public official getting up there and acting like this is a big deal, sad thing, like they knew them. Sometimes that can be pretty offensive. So it's kind of a word of caution. I mean, certainly Chief Delahunty, he was amazing. He just, just did an incredible job with the family and during that whole incident, and absolutely deserves to be there. And a lot of the religious ministers who were at the memorial service, they were. So I would just be careful. I don't know who's playing that. And also, I'm just curious, how much money did the town end up contributing? Do we know?
I don't think the town contributed, it was a
Just gonna be
private-
some labor for the DPW workers to plant the trees, that's all.
So the money was raised, I mean, I know, Bob,
By
I know,
neighbors.
citizens,
Yeah.
neighbors raised the money,
Yeah.
and they're not anywhere on this, from what I saw. So I just think it's a real sensitive, it's a real matter of being sensitive. The neighbors were close to, I know particularly David, they, on their own, without any town anything, went out and raised the money. DPW is providing labor, which is awesome, but if someone could take a look at what that program is intended to be, I think that would be really helpful, nice for the community, so. That was that. Thank you for the hybrid crosswalks. I actually think that after we put that much money into the CBD, it's really good to have something that's a little bit, nicer. And I was gonna say, well, it had to have been in the budget, right? So why not do it? Even though I know there's some maybe maintenance things, but this way with the hybrid thing, you can experiment, right? You can see how they behave up against the other painted ones. So I was really glad to see that. I think that was great. I mean, if there were cost overruns, they're dealt with a different way. You don't necessarily have to do it this way, right? And then I think the only other thing was that I would, two things. On the DEI commission, is there a town council designate? No.
No.
So that, I mean, you have like town council designees to all the other committees in town, or for many of them. This is a kind of key one, it makes sense. I know that previous council president attended a lot of the DEI commission meetings. So it seems to me that if we're having designees, it would make sense to have.
The town council president, which is me, which I will be at the
Yeah.
next one on June 13th,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is scheduling conflicts, but
Yeah.
the council president is an ex officio member of all committees,
Okay.
but not a voting member.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard to get to all the committees.
It is,
so-
but-
But if can be another designee, maybe that's one of the ways to deal with it. Because it seems like it would be important to have that be.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I mean, I know we set this up in my prior town, and I led that charge, and the thought process was that they didn't want, and this was coming from another group in town, they didn't want council members, or in that case, select board members on it. They liked having the staff members on there, so they could facilitate requests and programming needs and things they wanted to do, but not necessarily have council, or in their case, select board members on there. But I mean, that was kind of the thought process, not that that's right or wrong, but
Yeah, right.
that was kind of probably the same thought process here, but, because then it's truly community driven, and they can
Yeah,
bring
that makes
initiatives
sense.
forward and go
It might
from
make
there.
sense to ask them.
Without any sort of, outside
Yeah.
influence, whatever, so.
Okay. Or maybe they come to the council every quarter or something, so that you have more of a
Yeah.
connection, but anyway. And then the last thing I think is just that, I would like to have the council president entertain the request by Councilor Honan that was put forward in May to put that discussion item on the agenda. And I think that the reason that you mentioned, I think that was about the putting, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Honan, but this was around the statement around transgender youth, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the reasons that you mentioned, Council President, is that it wasn't something in Massachusetts.
Well, this was a Texas law, I believe.
Exactly.
Yes.
And my feeling is that that's all the more reason to do it. It's all the more reason to be proactive, to send a message to our community, to our youth, about what our values are and what we're looking. The fact that it's not, things happen all over the world, all over the country that aren't originated by us in this community or state, and it doesn't mean they're not really important. And in a way, I think it's even more important that we are aware of that and we're letting people know, because people are scared about it. So my daughter lives in Texas right now, and I know how horrifying that whole scene is, but it's starting to spread around, and it's good to kind of get out ahead of it. That's my request.
Thank you very much. Anyone on Zoom? If I forget. Are they all sleeping?
Yeah. Cut down to 4.
You say sleeping?
Council Honan, anything?
No, no.
Counselor
I thank you very much for your support. So actually, that statement, it didn't mention the other laws around the country. It was strictly a reaffirmation of the existing policies in town. It was very simple. And it was very much about this town, about Winthrop, about supporting our community, reinforcing our existing policies. So nothing to do with other states. It had to do with Winthrop.
I thought that's how I had read it, so that even more makes sense.
Councilor Stewart?
No.
Councilor Munson?
I encourage people to attend on Sunday. I'm looking forward to it. I'm very proud of the towns coming together, and I helped with that both at my business and privately, and I think that it says a lot when people come together and generate money to turn hate into some kind of form of an iconic moment of compassion and healing. So I think it's an important event, and I think we should talk about it, and I think that there should be some words said, and it helps me reconcile the whole difference of what happened versus what we're doing. And I'm a man that believes in inclusiveness and diversity, and to me this is an opportunity, and we should really push it. I hope it's well attended. Thank you.
Councilor Belcher?
Just a couple quick things. Senator Lydia Edwards is hosting a Pride potluck next Wednesday, June 29th, 6:30 at Ingleside Park. Thank you to Bob Carroll and everyone who donated to the GoFundMe for the trees, and also the Better Bus Project and the bus network redesign. They're having meetings pretty regularly. If you want to oppose the changes to Winthrop service, you can email betterbusproject@mbta.gov.
Councilor DeMarco?
I made it a point at this time, at the last meeting, to acknowledge Pride Month, and I wish I was a little bit more emphatic about it now. In retrospect, it's obvious there's a lot of pain and actually fear. That actually really struck me. Love is love. I think everybody on this council agrees with that. So I'm going to be going home and thinking a lot tonight.
Councilor Aiello?
Well, I'm going to commend Councilor DeMarco for what he did last week at the meeting. I think you underestimate the impact that had, so thank you for the leadership you showed.
Councilor I'm sorry. Councilor Flockhart?
I can come up with more things to say.
No, I have nothing.
And I'll just say on the agenda, July 4th, celebrations will be held on July 3rd instead of July 4th, which is a Sunday at the Point, beginning with the Horribles Parade and fireworks that evening. 2 nights from now, we get to do this all over again. But we will have a special town council meeting with the sole purpose now of approving the minutes from this meeting, which will enable us to be recipients of the SRF grants. Is there a motion for adjournment? Motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor Munson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Nay.
Aye.